All right, let's call the meeting to order at 6 o'clock. First item on the agenda is roll call.
Nyla Fry.
Here.
Trisha Brown.
Here.
Sam Kaufman.
Here.
Kristen Runge.
Here.
Aaron Moran. Joe Zisselsberger.
Here.
Robert McPherson.
Here.
Next item on the agenda is confirmation of open meeting compliance.
I can confirm that the draft agenda was published in the Waunakee Tribune on 5/3. The final agenda was posted in all three official posting locations on 5/2 and 5/3. And the final agenda and packet were made available online on 5/3. For those in the audience, just please be sure you sign into on the sign-in sheet with your name, address, and municipality for accurate record keeping. And those interested in public comment or public hearing portion of the agenda tonight, please fill out the appropriate forms and hand them to me prior to that agenda item.
And I would add that I see several folks here participating in Zoom as an attendee. Anybody interested in that forum wanting to make comments during either the public comment period or during any of the public hearings should at the appropriate time click raise hand, and we will then bring them in to speak in the order that they raise their hands.
All right, and a couple of things. We've got a long agenda tonight. So at the 90-minute mark, right about, we'll take a 5-minute stretch our legs break and then reconvene. For the public comment, if the item is on the agenda for public hearing, you'll probably want to save your comment on that or your statement on that for the public hearing specifically. Public comments and public hearing comments are limited to 3 minutes apiece. Fill out the form. Carla will call on us and then we'll go in the order that she calls on us. So with that, let us turn it over to you, Carla, for public comment.
So the first public comment is John Dooley at 2611 Dublin Way, Waunakee.
And when you're making your comment, if you haven't done this before, we ask you to step to the podium and make sure that the microphone is on green so that they can hear you in Zoom land.
Thank you. Real quickly, I really don't want to keep coming back to these meetings. Come up with a couple of solutions. One was from my wife. Change your meeting nights to Friday. We always go out for fish fries on Friday, so I wouldn't show up here. The other one would be quit lobbing these softballs out there. I mean, I just, some of them. I have 3 minutes. I got a minute on each one. The first one probably bothers me the most of any of them. At a meeting I attended here, there was a quote that came from the board table. And the quote was, "No disrespect to the pet store or Buck and Honey's. There's not a lot of shopping and things that you can do within the TID as it is today. It just doesn't exist." And I live out by there. And I went over and looked, and there's 21 commercial buildings in that area. And I think that you folks showed a disrespect to those 21 commercial people by that kind of a statement, and nobody kind of even challenged it. And that does bother me. I think we all want more commercial buildings. We want more commercial people to come into this community. And I don't think you get them by having comments like that say there's nothing happening out there, because there's a lot happening out there and other parts of the city. So don't pick that one out. Second one is, and I'm not going to stick around for, under the public hearing part, I hope you approve items 1 and 2. I think FDG has worked and jumped through every hoop they have to get that project going. And I applaud them for that. And I hope you can do it. The last comment I wanted to make is on the ADUs. I'm not sure still why we want to become Sun Prairie or Madison, but maybe we do. One of the things that came up at the planning committee was they talked about how it would increase the value of the property if you built a building on the property, which I guess makes sense to me. What wasn't said was, what does it do to the properties next to that property? Does that devalue those properties? I tend to think it would, but I don't know that. I don't know. I'm sure there's been some studies made. That would bother me if, as a homeowner, if somebody decided to build an outbuilding on their property for rental or for whatever else. But I think that if the village insists on going down that black hole, I'd like you to at least look at the fact that maybe you could allow people to add on to their existing homes or build onto their garage or up and not have an additional building on there. That's not a great solution, but it appears to me like we want to be Madison, or we want to do some of these things. And I think that would be a good compromise, at least to start, because it just appears to me like we're trying to provide a solution to a problem that doesn't even exist in this community. I can't remember who said nobody has even asked about that. So it just, I don't think it's a problem. And if it becomes a problem, I think it's gonna become a huge problem. So that's, it's just.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
All right, next up.
Second one is Kristen Runge on behalf of Eliana at 1316 Lawton, Waunakee.
And that's my address, not Eliana. So I got this letter in the mail from a young lady who is 7.5, and I wanted to read it. Dear Waunakee President, I'm Eliana. I am 7.5. I live in Waunakee. Could you please have more bike trails in Waunakee? I want bigger trails like DeForest. I want bike trails because I don't want to waste gas, so the earth is healthy. I like bike riding, and then people won't get in accidents or that many accidents. People can bike to schools. Many people like bike riding when it's nice out. If you have any questions, she gives me her phone number and she says, thank you, a bunch of hearts, and then her name twice. So if you take the effort to write in, especially at 7, thank you very much, Eliana. We will listen to you. We like bike trails too. Right. End of comment.
Shane Smith at 1810 Dover Drive, Waunakee.
I think I might have misunderstood. I want to speak on.
Is it a public hearing item?
Yes, number 5.
The Strand Task Force, no.
The Village of Waunakee Durst family approval.
Okay, that's a public hearing.
Okay.
So that would be the purple form. I'll put you down for public hearing,
Okay.
but
I don't care.
would not be now.
No.
Yeah, that's okay. That's all I have for forms.
All right. Is anyone online?
Yeah, so if anybody online wants to speak under public comment, not a public hearing item, please raise hand now.
I actually wanted to make
Yeah.
2 quick public comments. One, happy Clerks Week. Thank you, Carla, for all the work and your office does.
Thank you.
I know it's that and elections are a very stressful thing, being a poll worker. So I wanted to just recognize that. Second, for anyone in the audience that wants one of these, the Dane County Regional Housing Strategy meeting was on Thursday. I was attended with Lauren and I saw Aldasso there as well. So we had some people from committees there. I believe I saw Chris Sellner as well. There is a roadmap out that talks about the housing issues within the county and how every municipality, including the towns, need to be a part of the solution and step up and do their parts. So if you'd like to see the report, there's a QR code on here. I can give you this code. If I somehow run out of these, I'm not sure how many people will be excited about it. I'm happy to email you a link to it as well.
Okay, thank you very much. All right. Any other public comments?
I don't see any, no hands online.
All
And if you
right.
have public hearing forms, just hand them to me prior to that agenda item, please. You can hand them to me now, though.
Right. Next item on the agenda then is the consent agenda. Does anybody have anything they would like pulled from the consent agenda? If not, is there a motion?
I'll move to approve the consent agenda. Second.
All right, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion passes. Next up is reports, and first item for report is Sustainable Waunakee Ad Hoc Committee. We met for our first time a couple of weeks ago. Organized, went over the kind of broad arc of events for the next 2 years, discussed about the report. Made a list of communities who have sustainability committees that we want to take a look at their websites and some of their materials in preparation for putting together an RFP at our upcoming meeting. And we also made some assignments for gathering some information that we can put on a website to start getting information out there, even as we're getting ready for policy on things like sustainable lawns and other issues that might be helpful to community members. So it was a good meeting. And next one will be the 22nd. Typically, we would meet next Wednesday or a week from Wednesday, but we've moved that meeting to the 22nd to accommodate high school senior awards night and some other travel that some of our members have. Second committee is Wannaboom Committee. Plans are, contracts have been signed, plans have been made. We are very close, within a couple $1,000 of our fundraising goal for the year. So that's very exciting. Events will start at 2 o'clock and at, or kind of crescendo at 9:45 with the start of the fireworks. We've got 2 different bands planned, a whole host of activities that are free for kids, and our traditional food trucks will also be there in the chamber beer tent as well. So hoping people will show up and enjoy the 4th of July at Rip Park with us this year. Next up is Library Board, and Erin is not here. Do we have, she will be here soon. She's finishing up lacrosse practice, so let's move on to Utilities Commission. That would be you, Joe.
Sure. A lot of standard stuff at utilities. Two things of note. There was a presentation and approval of the 2023 audit report. Everything's looking really good there. And then we had some discussion about water and the new well and storage facility potentially going up that way in the new addition to Kilkenny?
Yeah.
Potentially, yeah.
Yeah.
So that was it.
Excellent, thank you. Senior Services Committee.
Senior Services Committee met, and we are learning that our numbers as far as serving lunches and the things that we're doing with senior citizens are pretty close to pre-COVID, which is awesome because as we all know, things really slowed down during COVID. So that's good news. And other than that, things are going really smoothly at the senior center.
Excellent. Joint Review Board. That'd be Lauren.
I'm trying to remember back that far. Joint Review Board, we went over Yahara Estates again, the RDC Westport request. That's Joint Review Board, sorry. It's been a long day. Joint Review Board met regarding TID 6 and did vote in favor of approving the TID 6 amendment to add Kilkenny West to the current TID 6 and amend those boundaries.
Excellent, thank you. I was also thinking Joint Plan Commission. So it's been a month. Parks and Rec Committee.
That and Public Works did not meet this.
Excellent. Waunakee Area Fire District.
We are about to have election for a new chair. The previous chair, well, and it's time for elections anyway, but we did have a change in membership from Springfield. So we are going to be engaged in that process this month. Otherwise, the study is continuing. I know that Trustee Fry has met with Robert Whitaker from McMahon. I'm meeting with him on Thursday. All the other municipalities have met with him, and they've met with most of the membership, I believe, as well. So we're making good progress on that study, and they're going to stay within their timeline. Otherwise, there's nothing to report.
All right, excellent. Any other committees, boards, or commissions that have met? All right, seeing none, let's move on to our public hearings. And our first public hearing is a public hearing into discussion / action on a request by FDG LLC to approve a certified map rezone from A1 to planned unit development and amend the existing Woodland Crest general development plan to include the newly created lots 1 and 2. If you're following along on your packet, you'll find this on page 39, and I'll hand it over to staff for a review before a summary before we open up the public hearing.
Sharing. So this is Woodland Crest. There's the existing Woodland Crest. This is for a request to the land directly south of that. They're seeking approval of a CSM that creates new lots 1, 2, 3, and Outlot 4. Lots 1 and 2 will be used for multifamily development of approximately 125 total market rate units. Lot 3 is part of an expected land sale to Kilkenny Farms subdivision, which will be the Dolan Avenue portion of tonight's agenda, to create additional 4 single-family lots. And Outlot 4 will be dedicated to the public for stormwater management. So the zoning is currently A1 Agricultural Holding District, which is pretty standard for this type of development. The request is to rezone lots 1 and 2 to PUD, specifically the PUD and GDP that cover the existing Woodland Crest, to include these new lots 1 and 2. It's been through. Yep. It's generally, not generally, it has been through, here we go. Here's the, just being a little so. So lot 1 is to the northwest, lot 2 is directly south of that, Outlot 4 directly south of that, which will be stormwater detention. And then lot 3 you see over to the east, above the currently planned bulb for Dolan Avenue. We have Connor Nett here from FDG to speak on this. Would you like to hear from him now or after the public hearing?
Let's hear from him before the public hearing.
Okay. Connor, do you want to? Okay. And let me know if you want to point to anything. I can pull up the pages you guys have.
Sure, sounds good. Thank you. My name again is Connor Nett I'm with Ford Development Group, part of the development team for the project. As Lauren had already mentioned, the project has been through the Plan Commission several times. We came in November for the concept plan review, and then February 12th, March 11th, and then April 8th, all for GDP review, in which we've had multiple iterations of how to have the development to better adjust to the scale of the surrounding neighborhoods. So the project overall consists of a 75 unit multifamily building that would be similar in scale to the image that was on the screen there. That's the project across the street for the completed Woodland Crest multifamily building. So this is a phase 2 of that. And then 50 units of stacked flats on the top of the hill on lot 1, in the intention with the 2-story stacked flat building to reduce the scale. And then the third part being the CSM lot 3, which would be in addition to the Kilkenny Farms neighborhood. Key updates that we've made since the initial concept plan submittal. Over the last couple months, we've been working on staff comments, on MSA comments to better demonstrate the transition in land uses on the far right side of the property, so the east side there. And that included a detailed grading plan, a detailed landscape plan showing the evergreen plantings, the canopy trees that will be used along that property line. And then through working with the Kilkenny Farms neighborhood, we're also adding an ornamental fence along that property line. So doing what we can to screen that transition as much as we can. So we've been working closely with them. So with that, we think that the collaboration that we've done over the last couple months with Kilkenny Farms, with staff to address those comments over the last 3 GDP meetings at Plan Commission have helped put the plan in a good place. And we think that this is a good opportunity to add additional housing to the community in a location directly adjacent to the commercial properties that will also enhance the Woodland Crest shops. Thank you for the time, and I'll be happy to come up for any additional questions.
All right, we'll hold the public hearing first, and then we will, as Board of Trustees, have questions. So let us open the public hearing on this item at 6:18 p.m. Do we have anybody that would like to make a comment on the proposed FDD development?
I have no forms for this first public hearing.
All right, anyone online? Yeah, do we have anyone online that would like to make a comment?
Please raise hand now.
All right, seeing no comments, we'll close the public hearing at 6:18 p.m. All right, trustees, what are your questions or comments? Should we start, Nyla?
First of all, I have a couple general questions so that the public would have this information. Where it says on the summary sheet, the zoning is currently A1 agricultural holding district. The requested is to rezone lots 1 and 2 to PUD and amend the existing Woodland Crest GDP to include the new lots. At what point would the A1 agricultural holding district status change?
So the map that we have up here, Nyla, is pretty good. So if you look at all of the property that is on that map, when the village annexed it, it goes into the agricultural holding district pursuant to our code. And so all of this land at different stages has been essentially rezoned from ag holding district to the general development plan that applies to Woodland Crest. So for example, initially the lot that has the building with number 1 and then the land where it has the buildings number 2, those were initially rezoned into a general development shortly after the land was annexed into the village. Then 3 and 4 got put into the GDP. So it's the last segment of land there that's on the east side of Simon Crest Way. I would say that it's always been anticipated that this land would ultimately be rezoned to PUD, but we've been waiting to get to this point. But effectively, it would, the egg holding district zoning would go away if you approve this tonight.
Okay, and then another general question is, once a property has been, from a township has been annexed into the village, how long does that township continue receiving taxes for the village gets it?
Well, we received the taxes, essentially the next, so if let's say a land is in the town of Westport as of January 1st of 2024, they're still going to receive the taxes for 2024. But once we hit 2025, we're going to start receiving taxes from that point forward.
Okay, thank you, Brian. A general question, or I think, I don't know, I know what stacked flats are, but I don't know what a garden style apartment is. Is there something special about it, or what is it with that?
That's just kind of a, I guess, a trade term for an apartment that's usually around 3 to 4 stories tall, being called a garden style apartment. So it's more about the scale of it being 3 to 4 stories. But besides that, underground parking is also something that's usually associated with it. So that's about it.
And then I have one other question. On the sheet that Strand Associates provided, it says, if there is a strong intent and desire to buffer the view shed from Outlet 2 to the east, Strand recommends a more detailed review be completed by providing final grading plans showing intended buffer spaces, intended berms, detailed landscaping placement, locations for electrical facilities and stormwater management features that may affect landscaping placement, location of waste and recycling, handling facilities, lighting, and other specific site improvements that would affect the development of the buffer area. Has any of this been completed at this time?
Yeah, so this image here is a rendering of what the buffer area would look like, but then there's also, I believe it's after this, included a preliminary grading plan and a preliminary landscape plan in which they have commented on. We didn't include any information on waste handling or electrical because we're not anticipating any waste would be in the area. There'd be no trash receptacles or anything like that. There could be a transformer, but that would be it. No other improvements are anticipated for that area.
Okay, thank you.
Can I add to try to help answer your question too? So, and now I'm focusing more on pages 95 to 101 of your packet, and specifically page 100. So the letter that I believe Strand had in there was dated March 1st. And so there's actually been a fair amount of work that's been done since that point. And so one of the things, and this is the recommendation from the Plan Commission and the Joint Plan Commission, but they had the same concerns, I think probably that you did based on Strand's comments. And so language was added to the general development plan because typically when you have zoning of this nature, you wouldn't provide final grading plans to be reviewed by the village until we get to the specific implementation plan. So like this is the GDP. If the GDP gets approved, it's for them to move forward. They need to have SIP approval, which is effectively site plan approval. You would not do your final grading plans until you get the SIP approval. But there was concerns that was expressed by the Plan Commission, by village staff and the Joint Plan Commission of we're concerned about how this development is going to impact the residential development to the east. Like how big is this building going to look? What type of buffer can be put in between to try to make it so it doesn't negatively impact the homes. And so that was the purpose for the language that was added on page 100 of your packet to the GDP to try to address that issue. And that's language recommended by both of the plan commissions. Now, it's still up to you whether or not that's satisfactory to you, but that's why the question that you asked was the Plan Commission and the Joint Plan Commission tried to address and did so with the conditions that were on page 100 in the red line.
Thank you.
Tricia.
Nope, I think any of my questions were addressed during planning commission conversations. And I think that the team has done a good job of being responsive to the things that we've asked for, or even if it was just things to explore and come back with. So none at this time.
All right, Sam.
No questions. Looks very nice.
All right, Joe,
Ditto what Tricia said.
Robert.
When do we anticipate that people will be able to start moving into these units? Is there, assuming we approve it tonight?
You're getting your steps in today.
Our hopes are to break ground still yet this fall. So then it's about a 14-month build, so that it'd be coming online sometime over the winter of 2025 into spring of 26. Spring of 26 is, or spring in general, is the time that you want to make sure you're available. So.
All right. Thank you. Sorry to make you walk all the way back again.
All right, I don't have any questions. Oh, I'm sorry, Robert. What other questions do you have? Yeah, okay, all right. I don't have any questions. I'll echo what Tricia and Joe said. We talked a lot about this during Plan Commission over the past many meetings. So my questions have all been answered.
And then we do have a request from utilities to slightly amend the recommended motion
Okay,
to also include a utility easement on the CSM. So a conditional approval of the CSM subject to an addition of an easement for the utilities.
all right. So with that addition, do we have any further questions? If not, do we have a motion?
I'll make the motion to approve the request by Forward Development Group LLC to approve a certified survey map rezone from A1 to planned unit development. Amend the existing Woodland Crest General Development Plan to include lots 1 and 2, subject to the conditional approval of a utility easement for Waunakee Utilities.
Second.
All right, any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda, page 106, if you're paying attention to your packet. Public hearing and discussion / action on a certified survey map rezone from A1 to PUD and resolution to vacate a portion of Dolan Avenue to transfer lands from Woodland Crest Outlot 2 to Kilkenny Farms. And so with that, back to staff.
So this part of Dolan Avenue is part of the current Kilkenny Farms residential area. Dolan Avenue has ended in a proposed cul-de-sac since it was platted. However, that cul-de-sac has not been constructed yet. Those lots have not been developed. So the land north of the cul-de-sac remains vacant under ownership by FDG. And so currently separate from the Kilkenny Farms parcels at the end of the street. However, this would add 4 more single family lots into this is the Kilkenny West, the Kilkenny Farms edition, and would be part of a land transfer. So portions of the current planned cul-de-sac bulb would be vacated and deeded to the adjoining lot owner lots to create a straight road along what is currently 1002, 1003, 1004, and 1005 Dolan Avenue. And then a cul-de-sac bulb will be located to the north where those new lots are located. The proposal, this is another one that we would recommend a slight change to the recommended motion to include a utility easement for this CSM. Which will actually improve water service in this area by creating a full water main loop. So it's both to the benefit of the local homeowners, utilities, and the village. So with that, I'll be here for questions.
All right. Do we have anyone from the developer that wants to present? No, this is pretty straightforward. All right. So let's open the public hearing at 6:29 PM. Do we have anyone that would like to speak on this particular item tonight?
I don't have any for this item.
Do we have anyone online?
Anyone online wishing to speak on this item, please click the raise hand button. Oh, hands.
No? All right, last call. All right, we'll close the public hearing at 6:29 PM. With that, trustees, what questions do you have? Robert, let's start with you.
I have just one question, and it's more has to do with the cul-de-sac portion of this. I know that we're not, and sometimes with emergency services as well, they're not a big fan of cul-de-sacs. I know that Durst Road, I know I mispronounced it, I'm sorry, is kind of offset from what Dolan Avenue would be on there. Was there ever any discussion about making that a connector, like a full connection as opposed to just going straight to a cul-de-sac in this case?
Good question.
So I'm going way back here. I think that there may have been a long time ago, and I hope I'm not misstating this. I think that the town residents on, is it Enders Road?
Yeah.
May have been opposed to it because they didn't want to see that essentially becoming a through street. But that's a recollection from probably way back when the initial Kilkenny Farms plat was being reviewed. But so I think there was a discussion, and I think that was the rationale is the town residents. Town residents were opposed to it.
And I think the other reasoning to that was relatively intense grade change between the south end of Enders and what would be the north end of Dolan.
There's no concerns. Okay, that's fine. And that was, I'm thinking about that just because they were probably considering that back when not FDG, but whoever owned that before FDG owned that land, but it was not a part of Kilkenny Farms in the beginning, right? Like it was always owned by another party.
Correct.
And it was still a part of the town at that point.
Yeah, it would have been, because this land, the little box that we're talking about here that would be transferred would have come in when the Ganser/forward land came in. Yeah, you were correct.
Right, Ganser, I was never gonna get there eventually. Okay.
So I am not aware of any more recent conversations on that in the extension issue that you just raised.
And I attended most plan commission meetings on this and nobody raised any questions on it. It's just, it surprised me because normally we question cul-de-sacs a little harder than we did in this case. So.
And during tech staff review, we do have a representative from the fire department as well as the police chief there, and neither of them voiced any concerns about having a cul-de-sac there.
I think from a general design standpoint, cul-de-sacs are not the best. So that's why I was, okay. That was my only question.
All right, Joe.
I had basically the same thought as Robert, and I think I actually did mention it at one of the plan commission meetings, but it was about, that long of a comment. So, and I agree, the grade change there is probably not real conducive to it. It would be kind of nice, but I also understand the concern with traffic through. Other than that, I have no concerns here.
Excellent. Sam.
No questions.
All right, Trisha.
No, I'm good.
Nyla.
No questions.
All right, I don't have any questions myself. Again, this has been through Plan Commission a number of times, so questions that I have been answered there. Do we have a motion or any further discussion?
I can recommend the motion or to approve the certified survey map, rezone from A1 to PUD and resolution to vacate a portion of Dolan Avenue to transfer lands from Woodland, Crest, Outlot 2 to Kilkenny Farms, subject to final approval of the Community Development Director.
And the easement.
And the easement for the utilities.
All right, do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Next item up, public hearing and discussion / action on a request by RDC Westport Farms LLC for approval of preliminary and final plat and rezone of 49.5 acres from the Village of Waunakee C2 to Waunakee R1 and R2 to develop 38 single-family home sites. This is page 186 of your packet. And note, this was a plat that we referred back to the Joint Plan Commission, who has completed it and returned it to us. So with that, to staff first, and then I do believe we have some representatives here tonight.
So this was previously before you at the March 18th meeting. Due to some questions staff weren't able to answer at the time. It was referred back to Joint Plan Commission. Joint Plan Commission then discussed that we worked with the developer and the town to address all of those issues that were brought up by the village board at that time. And they unanimously voted to bring it back to village board to the village board. So the applicant is seeking approval of a final plat to create 38 single-family residential lots and 7 outlots along the south side of Kennedy Drive and west of the railroad tracks. And accompanying the request is a petition to rezone the lands from the current C2 to the Village R1 and R2 designations. The R2 and R1 and R2 would be the village zoning code based on our current boundary agreement and extraterritorial zoning agreement with the town of Westport. So we do have some representatives from RDC Westport to answer any questions that you have regarding specifically last time what was brought up was stormwater, which they have gone through multiple iterations of this regarding stormwater there, as well as some other questions. So to answer questions, if you want to go up to the podium, just make sure that the light is green on the microphone and you'll be able to answer any questions from the village board.
Well, first we'll have you just present an overview if that's all right, and then we'll go to public hearing and then we'll ask our questions. If
Sure.
That's okay.
Yep,
Thanks.
you bet. So my name is Wade Wise from Weiser Engineering. We're the civil engineer and land surveyor for the project. As described, this is a 38 lot subdivision request. There are 7 outlots that are part of this subdivision as well, mostly for stormwater management. The highlight I think we want to make is that this is currently a zoned commercial property. It was part of the overall Web Crafters parcel that is to our due east. We are requesting a down zone, if you will, to residential R1, R2. As it relates to some of the issues and the items we addressed through the process with the town, specific to stormwater management, there was a flood study done in addition to the typical requirements for runoff rate control, sediment infiltration, all those kind of good things to truly understand what the drainage network is out here and how not to create more flood prone conditions for the adjacent neighborhoods. We worked through that. We obtained approvals from Strand Associates, Dane County Land Water Resources, the town engineer, as well as the DNR. So we have certainly done our homework and have all the documentation and permits in hand for the stormwater analysis for the site. We also performed a speed study to take a look at how Kennedy Road functions with and without our proposed development. And that speed study was ultimately accepted, and a reduction in speed will be implemented along Kennedy Road. So we were mindful of that as well. I think those are the 2 main items that were part of our discussions with the town. So certainly here to answer any other questions you might have.
All right. Thank you very much. With that, let's open the public hearing at 6:37 PM. Do we have anybody that would like to speak on this subject, Carla?
I have no forms for this one.
Do we have anyone online?
Reminder, if anybody online wants to speak on this item, click raise hand now. It's quiet.
Last call. Yes, very quiet public hearing so far. Last call. All right, we'll close the public hearing at 6:38 PM. And with that, what questions do we have? Sam, would you like to start?
Yeah, I have one question about the intersection of Kennedy and Eagle right there on the screen. Is that going to be a T intersection or is it going to continue curving like it does now?
No, good question. So the intersection there will be a throughway stopped intersection with a T as you would see appropriate for condition connecting there.
Very good. I have no further questions.
All right, thank you. Tricia.
Nope, they answered them in their presentation. Thank you.
All right, Nyla.
No questions. Thank you.
Yeah, Joe.
No questions. I'm still not thrilled with where Kennedy runs through here, but it is what it is.
What it is.
Yep.
Robert.
No questions.
All right. I thank you guys very much for coming. A lot of our concerns were around the stormwater drain off, and I think the information that we got from you in the packet was really clarifying, and I appreciate you being here tonight to answer any questions. So with that, do we have any other items or any other discussion? If not, I will make if I can get to it, I will make a motion. It is very long. So motion to approve the request from RDC Westport Farms LLC for preliminary plat, final plat and rezone of 49.5 acres from Village of Waunakee C2 to Village of Waunakee R1 and R2 to develop 38 single-family home sites subject to a final developer agreement and deed restrictions between the developer and the town of Westport. All right, do we have a second?
I'll second that.
All right, any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Item carries. All right, next item on the agenda today. Thank you very much for coming, gentlemen. Appreciate it. Next item on the agenda, public hearing and discussion and action on ordinance amendment to allow accessory dwelling units, ADUs, within residential districts within the village. This is page 201 of your packet. With that, Lauren, would you like to present, or Robert, are you going to present? Lauren, okay.
So this started at the December 18th meeting when Trustee McPherson gave a presentation on accessory dwelling units. The board approved a motion to send the issue to Plan Commission for review and recommendation. Plan Commission did review that at the most recent, at the April meeting. It also went to Joint Plan Commission. The proposed ordinance would allow accessory dwelling units by right on any single family lot in a district that allows for single family dwellings, which would specifically modify R1, R2, R3, and R3D zoning. And by what I'm calling internal reference to R1 permitted accessory uses, which is to say, for CR5, AC, ER1, and SR4, that's a lot of letters and numbers. For those three residential districts, what's listed as permitted as what is allowed in R1. So those three, by that reference, would be affected by this as well. I did come up with a map. Let me get down to it. That shows effectively and approximately what would be the places that are affected by this particular zoning change. The only difference is there's a line right above the blue along Woodland, this bright yellow line south of the airport. Looking further into that, the airport overlay restrictions may not allow for accessory structures really at all. So in that case, it could substantially affect what would be allowed here, but potentially not what would be allowed in the main structure itself, depending on how that were worked out. Just for reference, I have another map that shows you where the residential areas are that are not in a PUD, that are zoned R1, R2, R3, or R3D. So there is quite a bit of difference between the two. And that's due to current deed restrictions. So we also went through county records and looked to see which areas in those standard zoning districts are currently subject to some kind of covenant that might restrict their ability to do an ADU on those properties. So it's shrunken the map quite a bit. And then there are also the PUDs where it would depend on the general development plan and covenants for those specific ones, which are some of the newer developments. So that's quite a lot. I don't know if Trustee McPherson has anything to add to that before we get to discussion.
Yeah, so we've received a fair amount of feedback at the Plan Commission level. Oh,
Public hearing first before we get into.
I know, but
discussion.
I'm not going
Okay.
to discuss. I'm just going to say, so I do want to point out that I'm not going to give the whole presentation again tonight. That's what I was going to go for. But for the most part, everything that's in the packet as written is the intent of the discussion tonight. So I don't have anything new to add to what's been presented.
All right. So with that, are we ready to open public hearing? Public hearing, let's open public hearing at 6:43. Do we have anybody that would like to speak on this? Anyone turned in any forms?
No.
No. Do we have anyone online that would like to speak on this issue?
Yes, we have one, Mary Heimbecker, and I will bring her in. Mary, you should be able to come off mute and share your comments now.
And if you could state your
Hello.
name and your address for the record.
Yep, my name is Mary Heimbecker, 306 West 3rd Street in Waunakee. And I would just like to say that I hope that this gets approved. And I went through the area where I live. There's already a number of single family homes that were probably back in the day that have already been made into multi-units. I don't know how it happened, if we have an ordinance against it. But one place I actually lived in, 209 West Main Street used to only be 2 units. Now there's 3 units in that one. The Packer House on West and Main is a multi-unit, used to be single family, now has 2 apartments in it. A home on West and Second Street is multi. There's one on Third and West that's just down the street from me, a half a block. That one has 3 units in it. There's 2 homes on Second and South. They're kind of kitty corner from each other. They are both 2 units. So this is nothing new for these neighborhoods. And like I said, I don't know how those went through, but I'm hoping that this gets passed for anybody who does want to do it, and it just makes it a little easier for people. Thank you.
Thanks, Mary. Any other comments this morning or this afternoon, this evening? Seeing none, let's close the hearing at 6:45 PM. All right, and discussion. Let's start with you, Joe. Work from the inside out.
I'm not really sure where I want to go with this one. There's some specifics in here, setbacks, things like that, that I think I'd kind of like to work through some more, but as a general idea, I'm still pretty much okay with it. I'm a little surprised based on the map that was displayed, how limited this is actually within the village.
And Robert, rather than going to you, because I will end with you, if that's all right, Sam.
Yeah, having spoken to many residents in most of these neighborhoods, they're very, very supportive of this. There are many examples that already exist. Another one that was not mentioned, if you go by the library, you see there's that garage with the extra unit on the top. That would be another example where it's not a problem whatsoever. Or the house on West Street between Second and Third, where historically the back of a lot was split off. Somebody built a house there for their grandparent. That's probably the best existing example that we have, and it fits in beautifully with the neighborhood. So I have no problem with this whatsoever.
Trisha.
Yeah, I'm also surprised with the map. And Lauren, for clarification on the percentages that are in the little circle to the kind of the right corner, that's just in general of the ones that are colored. Is that correct understanding of that?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
So the little circle that's there, because it doesn't really correlate with the colors on the map. Is
Right.
that indicative of like of the lots that are colored? That's the kind of the breakdown of that. Is that correct?
Yeah, the colors are a little bit misleading, but basically, residential is on zoning maps shown as yellow. So that's where the yellow comes from. So it's only about 29% of parcels that would be
Right.
single family parcels that would be affected by this.
Yeah, so given that, and obviously I supported this at the planning commission level, and I understand some of the concerns that were made of not wanting to be like the college town where everything is a rental. But I also, like I said, I live in the area that Mary described, and I find it quaint, and I've had zero problems with any, like, whether it's renter or not a renter. And I don't want to name examples because I don't want to call anybody out that might not be compliant. But I also, I feel the need for some flexibility in having the thing I go back and forth about, and I know, Joe, you kind of said you're kind of on the fence too, is the question of whether or not one of the units has to be owner occupied or not. I've seen both work in the area, but I definitely want to have the option where if you are the primary residence and you want to have, whether it's a garage loft or like, sometimes a lower unit or upper unit that's a separate dwelling, whether it's for extra income so you can pay your own mortgage, or you can have your parent or, whoever stay there, or even a child that wants to come back and have their own privacy space. And the square footages that were noted in the minutes, I made a note that the suite studios in the FDG thing were 550 square feet. So they're a little bit smaller than we were talking about. I guess I support this in general. I'm trying to think about in the greater context of where the concerns were of how to put some parameters around it so that it's amenable to the majority of what people are thinking. But I think in general, I'm good with this. Sorry, that was a ramble.
That's all right.
That was an
That's
official
good.
ramble.
Conversation is good. Nyla.
I had it on. I'm basically for this because I feel that it gives families choices and when you own your property, you should be able to do some things with it that you'd like to do. And if it's, being able to build a smaller building next to yours to keep your family together as far as senior citizens or college students, that should be a choice that you have. I have had people contact me about owner occupied. From my experience, from when I was on the Board of Appeals, owner occupied only lasts for the person who actually builds the unit. Because after that, I don't feel that you have any control over it because you can't say, I will only sell this to you if you're going to live in it or live in one of these two buildings. That is I don't think that's possible to put that type of stipulation on a property. That's just from what I've understood previously. So overall, I am definitely for this. We need to build housing throughout Waunakee, throughout Dane County. Through more building, hopefully prices will at least moderate a little bit. So yes, I'm definitely for this.
All right, Erin.
Hello. Yeah, I'm in support of the ADUs. I think they're, I'm kind of reiterating what Nyla said. I think that gives a good flexibility and option to people. I think it's the reality of people's lives. A single family home doesn't suit everyone's living situation or, you know, family dynamic. I think it can help connect not just families, but communities or, you know, neighbors. And I think it gives us a good option, creating a, you know, different market of housing in the village that we, you know, I feel like are lacking in quite a few, but I think it's one more variety that we can add into the mix and hopefully keep people here or draw people here. And, you know, if they want to live in that and if it's safe and meets code, I think we shouldn't be the ones to stop that. So.
Excellent. Thank you, Erin. All right, and Robert, if it's okay, I'll go and then you go. I grew up in a neighborhood, we lived over in Sheboygan that had ADUs and it was a lively, great neighborhood with lots of different types of people living in it. I am voicing the concerns today, not necessarily based on my own positive experience with ADUs, but as the chair of the Plan Commission and having taken into strong consideration some of the initial fear, is that a good word for it? On the part of some of the plan commissioners and the wish that on the part of some of the plan commissioners, they would have had more time to talk about this. So I reviewed the CNU, the Congress Renew Urbanism Workshop videos. And there's one of the things that as somebody who does community development really worries me is when you have an issue that is kind of widely considered controversial and nobody in your community comes and speaks against it. It makes me wonder a little bit, are people aware that this is happening? It's one thing if they're aware and they're not engaged and they don't care and they're not showing up, then great, we've done our job. But that we don't really have anybody, when this has been controversy in Madison and other communities in the area that's pushing back against this, makes me wonder how well known it is. When Lauren and I were talking about this, I had her double check and triple check and then look up all of them, like go and look up all of the neighborhood covenants. Because if you look at where the yellow line is, to the right of that is the neighborhood that I used to live in. When we moved in 2009, there were covenants that prevented accessory dwellings there. We moved out in 2015 because we wanted to build an accessory building and could not in that. Those covenants expired in 2018. And I don't know that a single one of my neighbors in that old neighborhood would know that their houses are colored as potential ADU houses in this particular map. Like this would probably be a surprise to most of my old neighbors. And I looked at my own covenants now and we have covenants that expire in 2038. And if they're not renewed, then my neighborhood I live in now, I could finally build my accessory dwelling shed in it. But I don't know that people are really aware that those covenants can expire. And if they understood that this wasn't just somebody else's neighborhood, then I think we might be having a different conversation here today. So with that, one of the things in the CNU that they said is that, to quote one of the consultants who who was meeting with Waunakee. It's a videotape of a meeting in Waunakee over codes and how we can expand housing. She said, we encourage allowing ADUs in conjunction, I take this back, this is from page 207 of our packet. We encourage allowing ADUs in conjunction with already constructed buildings, either within an existing single-family house or in an already existing outbuilding such as a garage. This can serve as another way to add invisible density close to the village center. Allowing ADUs in this manner circumvents the concern of increasing lot coverage or changing the appearance of the neighborhood. So that was their direct recommendation. And then I thought, well, that's not how I understand their recommendations as an organization. So I went back and watched the video. And the second video we have, which is on a Google Drive and is accessible through our packet, at 117, there's a discussion of the challenges with changing the rules for single-family housing to allow ADUs. And that same consultant is talking about Madison's years-long process for this. She said it's interesting because the resident pushback is a problem everywhere. We haven't seen it here. So maybe it's not an issue here. Maybe people just don't know. A lot of that will be based on context. And here's the part that I am thinking, are we doing a good job here? There are a lot of things that you don't touch. That's 1960s and later single family subdivisions, which if you've got your community development hat on and you're looking at subdivision, you're like, well, that's where we probably need to increase our density. So again, this is what the consultant's saying. She said, when you touch those single family subdivisions, everyone's going to get thrown out of office. We get thrown out of office, not a big deal. Our Monday nights are free. So much of that, we have all got other things we could do. She said, so much of that is based on crafting the process and the message so that the people have been involved up front. And then she then goes on to explain the process for passing an ADU ordinance in Decatur, Georgia, which is, I wouldn't say we're like Decatur, Georgia, but we are a suburb of a larger area. So I wonder if this is going to be surprising to people and surprising in a way that has folks saying, wait a minute, I didn't think that pertained to me. And now you've passed the ordinance and they're coming here pitchforks in hands. We can say on the one hand, they should be paying attention. On the other hand, if you buy a house and 10 years later your covenant's expired and you didn't read that little line very closely or didn't remember it from your closing, then legitimately, I would wonder if we have done our job as a board in keeping people informed about what we're going to do. So I'm not saying I support ADUs as a person, but when we're talking about making a community-wide change, I'm wondering if we're bringing the community along with us with this one, or if this is going to be a surprise in a way that we might not choose to surprise people. So I realize, and that's why I want you to go last, Robert, because this is, you and I have talked a lot about ADUs over the years. You know where I stand about it. This is my concern and my fear with people not perhaps understanding that they might be subject to this when they're not engaged otherwise.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that's a good starting point. So if there's concern, I mean, we have had a member of the public come since this has been on the agenda every time and say that they believe that it is not a good idea. So we've had at least one person coming and saying that. I know that everybody seems to get upset when we talk about the city of Madison, and we sometimes make snide comments. We are all a part of, if there's one thing I learned at the Dane County Regional Housing Strategy meeting, it's that there are a lot of municipalities outside of Waunakee that are working together. In fact, I was a little annoyed because we were the only municipality that didn't stand up and say what we were doing to address the housing crisis within Dane County. But McFarland, Verona, there were some small towns, and then Windsor and DeForest, they're, Cross Plains, they're all doing things. They're all ahead of us. They're way ahead of us in some cases. And so when it came to ADUs, I picked it intentionally because as a result of the housing study that we did in 2018 into 2019, we identified that this was kind of an easy lift, and the village never took action. So I wrote the ordinance. You're right. I did base it off Congress of New Urbanism, but not entirely. Congress of New Urbanism's report is from 2021. If there's anything that we learned from COVID and how people are working from home now and how things have changed, it's that even research from 2020 into 2021 is now, it's done. The most recent numbers that as a part of the Dane County Regional Housing Strategy pointed out that, and this is the entire county as a whole. I'm sure you guys have seen the news about how many units that need to be built over the next 10 years. in order to, and that's just to keep pace. That's not to dig us out of the hole. That's just to not make the hole worse, if I understand it correctly. They look at us in the village. Now, remember, and I pointed this out at the Plan Commission, this is an important point. We are the 5th largest municipality. So when we look at a regional strategy, we're put right at the top. Like Waunakee, you don't have to go very far down the list to find Waunakee and where we're expected to be contributing. 202 units per year is what they're expecting the village to contribute in order to help meet that goal. I don't believe that we were anywhere near close to that last year. I think we were about 127, 130. Single family. Just units. Yeah, single family units. Like,
So that's not counting. That was our single family home starts. That's not counting multifamily units brought to market.
and I understand that, but we don't always desire to build multifamily apartment complexes. Let's be honest here, because we're not building condos, we're building apartments. So we are not keeping pace with perhaps where the rest of the county is in addressing. So ADUs are a solid start. But when it comes to opposition of ADUs, it's an interesting thing. There are people who make a lot of noise on this. I pulled, just to make sure I got it right, I pulled City of Madison. This is where I'm going to go back to. I know we don't like Madison, but it's a good recent example. They held a vote to legalize ADUs by right within the entire city. And now they have 8-unit properties and things that we don't need to consider. But they had 47 registrants in support, 5 in opposition. This was overwhelmingly okay with the city of, people in the city of Madison. And if you're following anything that's going on in the city of Madison, people will make their opinion known, see the West Side arguments about what they're doing over there. So that's a good litmus test, I believe, for where we need to be with what we're doing. If we have 1 or 2 people that are opposed to it, I'm sorry. I know that there are people who will not like change, and there are people who will see every change and say that you're changing the village that I moved into. But it is almost, and here's where I may not get elected next year, it is almost naive to think that your neighborhood will never change over time. We have to address this issue. We have to use our land better. ADUs are easy. I mean, I've given the presentation before. It seemed I got pretty positive feedback. So I want to address some of the more stickier issues I'm surprised nobody wanted to bring up. I would say that we should, I'll dive right into it. Owner occupied versus non-owner occupied. There were some comments that were made at the Plan Commission. Some of them were a bit more, say, mean-spirited than others, but there were some legitimate concerns. How are you going to stop somebody? The phrase that was used by our former village president, no less, was so somebody from Chicago could own one of these units and build an ADU on the property. Yes. Somebody from Chicago could own the house right next to any one of us right now. There's nothing stopping them from doing that. We have to get over this fear that people who, just because they don't live within the village or it's not their primary residence, because I do know from the housing study, we had multiple members there that own multiple properties within the village and they were village residents. So these sometimes are your neighbors who live up the street that just happen to own multiple units. It's okay if they want to have an ADU. We have rules in place that keep the property clean. We have rules in place that go after nuisances. This would not change that. When it comes to setbacks, because I have actually received some email concerns about setbacks, you'll see in there that there are requirements on the setbacks that are, they're not very aggressive, and they even have accountability for if there's, for having fire, how long it can burn, to make sure that nobody's putting in something that's a fire hazard on a setback or near a property itself. So we have a lot of, we've thought through these things. There's the move from 800 to 900 is the maximum, just to harmonize with some of the other, I'm going to look at Lauren because she's the one who brought this up to me, but to just make it equal across the board. We've crafted this as well as we can and to address the changing needs. So while there is very valid concern, we can't keep doing things the way that we're doing it. I will express some frustration at looking at that map. It was disappointing to see how many units were excluded from that. For the people who live in the area that they can build it, if they do build and then when they do start seeing positive results, because there's tons of research out there that says it's positive, you might have people in some of these areas that are currently deed restricted that go to their HOA and say, hey, let's at least have the conversation about this. You are correct. There are certain areas that are going to expire or close to expiring. And that's going to be on them if they want to continue to have an HOA or not. The only one that I will completely seek ground on is the overlay for the airport, because I having remembered the last time the airport had any sort of accessory units built in the back, I do not want to reopen that can of worms, trust me. And then as far as the Joint Plan Commission, the ETZ zone, that's also disappointing. I did attend the JPC meeting on that. They did invite me to speak. I said, no, thank you, because they voted very quickly after no discussion. So I understand the concerns of Westport. I think that it's a bit short-sighted on the town, to be honest, that they wouldn't even have a conversation about it. But I do know in the future, if we want to expand this a bit, Westport has their, the way that their agreement is with Middleton. They wrote their ordinances so that Middleton could make changes in the ETZ area and it didn't impact Westport's side of the ETZ. I think that's something that we can investigate in the long term. I don't think that should be a cause to delay the ADU ordinance tonight, because we can get this on the books and at least get started for the areas that we've already identified that it is. And then we know we need to do zoning and code reform anyway, so this could take care of itself a bit. And then that would just leave us again with the HOAs, and they are free to do as they wish. That's their deed restrictions that people who buy into those properties agree to.
Other comments?
One other thing I'll add that I did not mention is over the course of the last 5 years, there have been two formal requests to do this. Keep in mind, both were in the joint planning area. One of them was on Endress Road on a double wide lot in which the owner bought two of them and combined them together. The other one was on Woodland Drive adjacent to the Steeplechase development. And I have had at least two other individuals over my tenure here, predominantly in the downtown, bring it up as a question. So the statement that's been made that this is, nobody's ever requested this, I would say is most certainly not accurate, because it has gone to Joint Planning Commission at least on 2 occasions.
Well, and we do allow, it's not by right, but you can turn a single family home into a duplex, and we've done that a number of times since I've been here. Yeah, Joe. Did you have, no? Yes?
No.
No, okay. It looked like you're reaching for your microphone. All right, my concern, I would love it if we would take this, take at least another meeting so that people can be aware if they are in an area where they think they're covered and they're not, that there is at least some, effort, however short it may be, to let that sink in and let them at least voice a concern. That would be my preference, but I don't know if that'll fly. So.
Kristen, question with
Yeah.
that. Would there be any benefit for some additional clarification of, and I know that everybody can find this and they can go look at what our current ordinances say, but just a brief overview of, to what you just said right there, like you can take a single family and make it into a duplex, or how are duplexes currently addressed in there, just so that there's not like additional questions or clarifications as it relates to that. I don't know if it's a lot of extra work for staff probably, but.
I think that's reasonable. It's a big change, and I don't know that 2 weeks or 4 weeks of discussion is going to prevent anybody from getting one in the end, but it might be the one action that we can take to say, yeah, we really did make sure that we allowed time for people to react to this. A little bit of CYA there.
I mean, we didn't have any at Plan Commission. Nobody really came in to give comment there. It's on the agenda tonight and nobody even stood up to give comment. I received 2 written comments. That's the extent. I don't believe that we've been any more than any other ordinance that has been brought before this board. I do not believe that we were hiding anything. I did hear, some plan commissioners express, well, I want to go find people in the community that don't like this. And that's an odd statement to make, but that was a statement that was made. That was a statement that was made. It was, I know people in the community and I didn't get a chance to talk to them about this.
That's different than I'm going to go find people. Yeah. And I think also though, that's kind of part of our job too, is to talk to people about this. So again, where I stand personally on ADUs, but when you look at the length to which some of these covenants, or the time frame which was some of these covenants that people believe that they are covered under are going to expire, I do think we're going to catch people unawares. And I don't know that that's great governance to hope we're going to sneak it through. And I'm so sorry you didn't come to one of the 2 or 3 meetings we had.
I take that.
2 more weeks won't hurt a thing.
With respect to the chair, we are not sneaking anything through. This has been publicly noticed. It went through a proper class notice in the newspaper. It's been in the newspaper. In fact, it was in the Tribune back in December after we discussed it. I'm not sure. I really feel like these statements are more, we're just trying to go round up some people that would come in and speak against it, which
not my intention, but I do want people to be aware that if they think they're covered, they might not be covered. So I've said my piece and I don't think I'm going to persuade anybody any differently. So with that, do we have any other comments or discussion?
Clarification, there's a lot of different options that were put in the recommendation from staff, a lot of questions to us. And then in the discussion tonight, I think maybe even more kind of expounded on some of those. Are we talking about existing structures being converted into ADUs? Are we talking about adding on? I think there needs to be some clarification with that as we, whatever we decide to do going forward, just.
I can tell you, the ordinance as written is, the answer is yes, it's both. It's existing structure add-on and then detached as well, as long as it fits within the footprint of the property, which would follow what our accessory use guidelines that we have on.
Right, I understand. That is the way the ordinance is written. There were specific questions in the recommendation in the staff report. Am I remembering that wrong?
They wanted us
Right.
to consider, should we limit it only to single family lots, or we can go down the questions if that works best.
Well, that's kind of where I'm going, is there were a lot of different items that seemed not, that they wanted to have some clarity on it, which I don't disagree with, as far as maybe vetting those a little bit. Not
Should
to
we go
drag
through
this out.
those questions or do we want to? I mean,
This is
why don't we go through some of the questions here? So. Single family homes would be allowed to have an accessory dwelling. Correct, an accessory building. That could be a dwelling. What else have we got here?
The question is,
Duplex.
should duplexes be included, because that was in the original ordinance proposal, was that duplexes were included in the zoning.
So a duplex could have an additional unit, so 2 units on a duplex lot plus a third unit is an accessory dwelling. You're shaking your head. yes, Laura.
That was the original proposal, and the question is, should we limit this to single family lots or open it up to also duplexes that are within these zoning districts?
Are the homes that have been converted to 2 flats, do they count as a duplex or is that still?
Yes.
Just for clarification, Aaron, it is illegal in the village currently to have an ADU. Like
I
for
know that.
residential- No, so I'm saying every one of them is going to be a duplex.
Okay, I'm saying I
Our
would be
flat
fine.
differences side by side. I think she's actually like asking like structurally. the
Oh,
difference.
structurally, I
Like a
apologize.
home that's now 2 apartments,
Sorry.
like a lot of my neighbors are 2 flats.
Right.
And I think it's fine if there's a garage that they want to be converted. So I was just clarifying that those technically would be a duplex.
Other questions or comments?
I'm not sure if it totally applies to this. I'm curious about section 2F and then I guess probably 2 and 3. The way I read that, it makes it sound like somebody could build something outside of the normal building pocket because it's an ADU. But if they were to propose that during the initial construction, that would get denied. Is that an accurate assessment? And if so, how do we fix that?
So if you had a new building in a residential area where it's permitted, you could not have an accessory dwelling until the building is built and then you come back and apply for an accessory
That's-
dwelling?
Kind of how I'm reading that, yeah.
That's how I read that, and that was gonna be one of my questions, like, someone builds a garage, and that's fine, and then they have 2 garages for a month, and now they're,
You always have to have a primary use before you can have an accessory use. That's just, so that's the way it's gonna have to be.
I guess
That
I'm
helps.
looking at it from more of a setback standpoint. If you've got a 10-foot setback from a side yard, and now this is saying it looks like. you
Which
can be
one, which
just-
one are you on, Joe?
Section 2F 2 and 3.
Which page?
It's page 212.
So F2, if located within required rear yard, the accessory building must be located a minimum of 5 feet from side and rear property lines?
Yeah. But
So,
your building pocket might be different than that
for the primary
for the
structure,
particular lot in general.
Well, then they would have to come and get I mean, so in other words, if you have a unique essentially way that your property is set up,
Yeah.
the lot lines, yeah, at that point, they would have to come and seek a variance from the village if they wanted to put an ADU, within that setback area. And it may be the case but there's then different standards that they'd have to satisfy for that.
Okay, but it would have to come through and we'd have to.
Yeah, that
deal
would
with
go through the zoning board
individually.
of appeals. Yep.
Okay, that's fine.
If I can chime in on something, I
Yeah.
mean, if you all want to hold off on doing something tonight because you have questions about this ordinance, that's up to you. With respect, Kristen,
Mhm.
the statutes have been followed, and if we start saying, okay, statutes have been followed, but we're gonna hold off because we want to get more public input, that is a slippery slope, because you basically need to do that, then you almost need to set up different periods for zoning ordinances, different from the statutes, and you don't always have to agree with me, but I've been saying for 20 years, I always just recommend following the statutes, and the statutes have been complied with here. And so it gets dangerous if we start holding off taking action because we want more comments when in fact we follow the statutes, because what happens if we don't do it for the next time a zoning ordinance comes forward?
All right, I fully respect that. Yeah. Yeah, that would be a reason to act tonight or not act tonight. Yeah. One way, or accept or not accept. Other comments or questions?
I guess I would be in support of us removing that the owner needs to live in the primary or the accessory, because I don't think that that would impact this.
I would be okay with taking it out only because of the comment that Nyla made. It becomes hard to control in an enforcement mechanism when that happens. I mean, you can have it, going back to covenants again. All right, I live in a neighborhood that has covenants that have not expired. The covenants were designed to originally have an HOA. The person who founded it moved out. We haven't had it for 20 years. Sure, could somebody restart that any day now? Absolutely. But again, the enforcement mechanism of that, right? We're not going back to like the chicken conversation. Where
Yeah.
we were talking about the enforcement of, well, that's kind of hard because it's not there. Most people in the neighborhood, certainly that I live in, they don't even know that the covenants even exist. And if you read through them, I mean, the things in there are such minor. You can't have your garbage cans outside. Everybody's violating at least one thing in those covenants. In every neighborhood in this village, I guarantee it. So yeah, I would support removing the owner occupied provision.
Other comments, Joe?
Based on Sam's comment, just about the chickens, I cannot possibly vote for this. Not because I don't think that it's got a lot of merit, but we've already disenfranchised the Plan Commission once by not following the vote there for the chickens. I can't do that again here.
Thank you.
I thought the Plan Commission voted in favor of this ordinance, and it was the JDU.
3-3 with one.
Oh,
absent.
Other comments?
I do want to address the Plan Commission item that you just brought up there, Joe. This does not. I kind of take a little umbrage with this disenfranchises the Plan Commission. The Plan Commission was deeply upset because of the timing. As I've discussed with staff, there's statutory timelines that we didn't follow. So it was kind of, Kristen and I had a side conversation and said, okay, well, it can at least go to the Plan Commission, but we don't want to wait too long. They were not disenfranchised with the chickens. Again, they issue an advisory opinion. They are not the elected officials of the village. And they had a chance to have their opinion. And in fact, they did influence the chicken ordinance, despite the fact that they did not vote in favor of it. Unfortunately, with having gone and presented the Plan Commission and again, there was some very forceful commentary from some of the commissioners. They just didn't like it. And I don't know that they stated that they couldn't find a way to vote yes for it. Let me rephrase that and strike that last
And they
word.
wanted more time.
They did want more
wanted
time,
more
but
time with that.
but because we didn't follow the statutory timelines on it, it just became the way it is. It's unfortunate that it happened that way, and I wasn't happy with it myself either, but we just had to keep moving. Unfortunately, that's just how the state law is written.
Yeah, they requested more, the three that voted against requested more time with it is what happened. I don't know if they would come around or not, I don't know if we would have given more information or had answers to some of their questions, and it was a one-shot deal for them. So I wouldn't say they were unhappy. I would say that they were unhappy that they didn't have more time to talk about it, and it was a very sudden, to them at least, a sudden thing. Other comments? Yeah, Nyla?
I want to say that I realize change is difficult. It's difficult for everyone. I've lived in Waunakee since 1977. We have an alley behind our home. And we just had a garage built across from our yard, right across the alley from our yard. It's not something that I would have chosen to have put up because it blocks my view and I can't watch the neighborhood kids playing anymore, whatever, but it's a change that I need to learn to live with. Nothing against the family who put it up. They needed a garage and I respect that. We need to do what we need to do so people will have housing in not only Waunakee, but Dane County, the state, the nation. There's a housing crisis right now. So I just feel that we need to move on with this. I don't know what happened with the Planning Commission, why they didn't get to it, so that they could have had a longer discussion about it. But I feel that we've gone through the process and I think that we need to vote on it.
All right, any other comments?
Is there an option, thinking through all of the different concerns that have been, if it's existing structures and it's just like reconfiguring or updating one so that it meets the code requirements for a dwelling unit, that's one category. If it's anything outside of that, that there's a special, whether it's a conditional use permit or a variance or whatever might be required process, so that that can be vetted based on what the setbacks are, all of the things that factor into considering that additional dwelling unit. I don't know if that's something that has to come back or if that's an option, but I feel like that would be alleviating some of the concerns that people are having about the unknown. But also, just like we've all talked about, there's a lot of properties that are doing this. I think I don't feel like it's been an issue. I would like to make them compliant in some way, but just a question, I guess.
So you would say, I just want to make sure I have it right. Because I think we're talking about like 2F1 probably and things like that in there, or were we define about like where it has to be located within, near the primary building or the setback
Like
requirements?
new
and things
additional
like that?
structures that are being built just to be an ADU, basically. Yeah.
Okay, so I just want to make sure, so if things that would be out of compliance with what's proposed, or that we always go through a CUP process when it's a detached unit? I'm just trying to get to where you were.
Can I jump in?
Yeah.
I just say, I think you want to solve these problems in the ordinance itself. One of the issues is the law has been changed on conditional uses where they are effectively permitted uses. Our ability to deny a conditional use is almost non-existent. And variances are only supposed to be used in extremely unique circumstances because, and I think Nyla knows this from being on the zoning board of appeals, if you start approving too many variances, that just means you need to change your code. So, I think whenever you're doing something like this, you always have the ability to do the best job you can on the front end. If you learn, maybe I need to make a few tweaks, then you always amend the code. But you're going to, we've seen this with probably the lighting ordinance that came through the Plan Commission, the village board. There's no guarantee that you're going to get it perfect the first time through, but in part, that's how you learn, is you do it. And then especially administratively, you find out maybe what some of the hiccups are, and then you come back and you rewrite it. And, maybe there's a few that don't make as much sense as you wanted them to, but you never would have known that had you not approved it in the first place. The sign ordinance is going to be coming your way at some point in time, and I guarantee you you're going to have to accept, that you cannot allow good to be the enemy or perfect to be the enemy of good, because you're going to have to accept some stuff you don't like in that sign ordinance.
So we have had a good, healthy discussion. We brought up some pros, we brought up some cons, we brought up some things we know we're going to have to deal with. Does anyone have anything they would like to move forward?
I would like to make a motion, and this is going to be somewhat complicated, so I'm sorry in advance, Carla. It's more just to answer some of the questions that were out there.
Mhm.
So I would like to motion to, let me read the predefined language so I don't get this wrong. Is there even any? Okay, I motion to approve the proposal to amend village ordinances to allow for accessory dwelling units with the following conditions. All right. First is to amend, keep scrolling back and forth. I'm sorry, this takes forever. Amend section 2C to strike owner occupied. Amend section G to read as 900 square feet. And that's it. Does that also, yes.
Wouldn't you also want to remove 2B?
Oh,
You're gonna
sorry.
make that change?
Yeah, yes, thank you. And to amend section, and to strike section 2B.
I'll second it.
Can I ask a question on the square footage, Robert?
Yes, absolutely.
The reason for that? The reason for the square footage change?
We, when the research was done by Lauren on surrounding municipalities that had done it, they had all come in at 900 square feet. So we just wanted to be equal with the rest of the region so that there wouldn't be confusion. And Brian is gonna.
Oh, no, and I don't have any problem with that. I just think if you do increase the size to 900 square feet, I think in talking with Lauren, we have an existing code language that limits the size of accessory structures to 800 square feet. I think we're gonna need to double back and allow other accessory structures to also be 900 square feet to be consistent with this. Doesn't prevent you from making the change that Robert's identified though.
Right now, it would just be for ADUs until we
Okay.
addressed it on everybody
Until we
else.
fix our code.
Yeah.
Right. All right, any discussion on the motion? No, seeing none, all in favor?
Roll call.
Oh, we need a
Roll call, please.
vote. We need a second.
Nyla
seconded.
seconded, so,
And you'd like a roll call?
yes, please.
Got it. Nyla Fry,
Yes.
Trisha Brown,
Yes.
Sam Kaufman.
Yes.
Kristen Rungy,
On behalf of Plan Commission, no.
Aaron Moran,
Yes.
Joe Zisselsberger,
No.
and Robert McPherson.
Yes.
All right, motion carries. Next item on the.
Did you want to take that
Yes,
break?
you're right. It is an hour and a half in. Thank you, Sam. We're going to take a 5-minute break and then we'll come back to the Durst property and the public hearing. Good. Oh, Jared hasn't given us the go ahead yet. Now we're good. Let's call it back to order at 7:34. Next item on the agenda, if I can pull my agenda up, is a public hearing and discussion action on a request by the Village of Waunakee and the Durst family for the approval of Annexation Petition, Detachment Petition, Certified Survey Maps, Rezone of Property to CON-Conservancy District as identified, Chapter 133, Article 3, Division 19, and rezone of property to County A1 Agriculture District exclusive as identified in Chapter 133, Article 3, Division 26, Section 133, 860-12 for land located near Woodland Drive and Mill Road intersection. And I believe that's to you first, Brian?
Yes, and we're gonna pull up page 223 of your packet because that's probably gonna be the easiest way to describe this. So there's a lot going on with this, but it's fundamentally comes down to a land swap between the village and Fritz and Sharon Durst that would ultimately allow the village to build a path in the land there that is called area to be area to be annexed. And if you look to the land that is just to the west of area to be detached, that's all village land. So you can see kind of the path as it will come down. It's pretty narrow, but there's a lot on your plate with this. That's why there's 5 separate motions. What effectively would happen if you approve this is the land that says area to be annexed, that is currently owned by Fritz and Sharon Durst. That would ultimately be conveyed to the Village of Waunakee. The land that says area to be detached is currently owned by the village of Waunakee. That would be sold to or swapped with the Dursts. We've already had appraisals done that have been approved by the DNR that say the value of the two lands that are going to be swapped are even. The reason why we had to go to the DNR is our land, the area to be detached, has a deed restriction on it that effectively says it needs to be used for open space. We're here, and then part of those two things also are, we have rezoning, which effectively would rezone the area to be detached, that would be the Durst new land, to their existing zoning in the town. Our land that would be annexed would be rezoned to the Conservancy, which is our existing zoning, and we'd have certified survey maps that would create lots to kind of fix all of this. We got here, and I think you all know this, because right now there's a fence on our land. And so we saw the fence, we didn't like it, we were going to tell them to take it down, but we also saw a unique circumstance. We cannot condemn land for paths by statute. And this offers an opportunity to put in a path that we've been thinking about, I think I heard Tom Wilson from the town say, for at least 20 plus years. So there's a lot there. I know that we've had discussions about the fact that there's a fence. Obviously, that is not a good thing, but in this instance, it's providing a unique opportunity to the village. And I will note that we do have 5 separate motions, recommended motions from staff, because staff supports this. The annexation requires 5 votes of village board members. A detachment requires 6 of the 7. And for the CSMs and for the rezoning, that's just a simple majority. So there are some special votes that occur here. Certainly willing to answer any other questions that you might have after the public hearing. The public hearing is really only for the rezoning, but I wouldn't limit to that. I would let people talk about whatever they want to talk about, be my thought.
All right. All right. I think that's great advice. So then let's open the public hearing at 7:38. Do we have anybody who would like to comment on this issue?
We do. The first one is Shane Smith at 1810 Dover Drive, Waunakee.
And a quick reminder to those online, if you do wish to speak, go ahead and press the raise hand button at any time during the hearing.
Oh, sorry. It's already green.
Oh, there we go. Sorry about that. Yeah, I'm Shane Smith, 1810 Dover Drive. I'm like right about here somewhere. Mainly, I just wanted to say that we love Waunakee. We love our neighbors. We think everything's great around here. And I'm all for trying to get some kind of additional things for the community into play. But the whole reason we bought our lot was because we had an outlot in the back that had nothing behind it. Okay. And I mean, frankly, the amount of new developments I see going up left and right every time I turn my head, there's no reason in my mind why we couldn't be doing something similar to what we're proposing here in that area, rather than trying to put it in somewhere that we've had 30 years of nothing there. It's definitely concerning to me, especially as somebody that was a troubled youth that has reformed. That's the perfect opportunity for somebody to go out there and go party in my back outlot. And I don't want that. I have plans to build in that area, and I want to see it just the way it is right now. I look out my window every day when I'm working, and I get to see this beautiful nature scene. I don't want to see a bunch of people riding their bikes and stuff like that. There's plenty of space for us to do this somewhere else. Let's leave this alone.
Right. Thank you, Shane. Next up.
Margaret Tuscany at 1804 Dover Drive, Waunakee.
Okay. It doesn't matter. You can hear me. All right. I kind of have to agree with everything Shane said. This is a nature preserve. When we bought it, it was touted as a conservancy. There is so much wildlife and deer and, eagles and turkeys and cranes and turtles. My concern is that it stays conservancy. And I do agree, there are many other places that make more sense if you want to do this than in this little pristine area. And I also am concerned about crime and, youth that goes back and litter and the disruption to, the nature. And I don't know what else I need to say except that I was very disappointed with this, where I think you could do more. I understand the 7-year-old that wants a path. There's plenty of other things we can do than to destroy this little piece of nature.
Right, thank you, Margaret. Next up.
Anita Ranum at 1802 Dover Drive, Waunakee.
Hi, I'm Anita Ranum and I've lived at 1802 Dover Drive for about 5 years now. When I first moved in, I moved there because of the conservancy behind me. I was informed that it was DNR protected land and it was not to really be touched. Since I've lived there, I have had the opportunity to see like this amazing wildlife diversity, along with a lot of protected and endangered species that are out back. And I would be happy to walk any of you back into the land that is where I'm at, and then to the creek, which is well up there. To see some of these things. We have orchids, we have woodland orchids that are quite rare. We have frogs, we have turtles. We've had a martin come through. So I'm really, my concern comes from an environmental aspect. I am a naturalist. I have spent my entire life in nature. It's how I was born and raised. And I bought that piece of land because I was told it was protected. My concern is when we annex this, for this bike path, and you were talking, Kristen, about transparency. This was a shock. This took all of us in the neighborhood by surprise. And I understand that it was in the works, or at least I understand it was in the works before our notification letter, which I thank you for giving us the notification letter that came to us. But we didn't know about it. And I just feel with the loss is so great. We only have a small amount of true nature preserve left, and especially within the village. Why would we pave over this area? Just think about what we are doing to damage this area. It can't be brought back. Once the damage is done, it's done. So I know others have concerns about the people back there. It's very rare that we ever see anyone other than maybe an occasional person in their kayak. I'm a kayaker too, in their kayaks getting stuck on the rocks and stuff, which is great. And if we do anything, can we maybe just put a walking path that connects to the conservancy? That would be amazing. And maybe even label some of the wildlife or the natural plants that are there that are endangered. And I guess that's all I had to say. I'm just really concerned that we're losing something more than we're getting.
Thank you, Anita. Yeah, next up.
That's all the forms I have.
We've got a hand. Do you want to do a form and? Yeah, yeah. 3 minutes.
Please just state your name and your address for the record.
Yeah, Tim Luttrell, 1309 Spawn Drive. I'm not sure that I can keep this to three minutes, but in 1989, I was asked by Jeff Murphy to join a small group to build some bridges in the Castle Creek Conservancy. I got interested that way, and we began talking about planting trees, prairie, extending the trails. I provided a comprehensive master plan. I gave it to presented it to the Rotary in 1992. And in that plan was this area that's here to be detached. We actually put prairie seed in there. There was some beautiful, small, but 8 to 10 foot tall butternut trees. And in 1998, about 25 years ago, I called the village and say, hey, somebody mowed all that and cut those trees down. The administrator was Kelly Frawley. So if you look up when he was the administrator, that's when I called. I do support what you're trying to do here because this is a very complicated mess. To the people who are upset about the fact that they're going to lose, we're losing something, we're actually gaining more conservancy, or at least the accessibility to more conservancy. Our original master plan was to have 5 bridges. 3 were built and we ran out of energy, but they were going to cross the stream twice more and get up into this high zone. Now we can do that and actually take it all the way to Mill Road. It would not be a paved walkway or bike lane. The original donors of this land, Simon Builders, made it sure that this was a grass trail all the way along. And that's what the intent that I have and they have would be. So I support what you're trying to do. This has been a problem for a long, long time. I would suggest the village board put in their budget for next year a fence. So it's very obvious what the Durst property is and what village property is for the rest of duration. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim.
Did I
Thanks.
keep it under 3?
You did. You did. The chimes didn't start. So Carla, any others?
I have no others.
One more?
I am Andy Rochadle at 1808 Dover Drive, and to say that the nature part is definitely a concern of mine. Plus, I'm wondering about the monetary expense of trying to build this. This area is subject to flooding all the time. It's gone up to the pond in previous years. This area over here has been underwater where the trail is supposed to cut across. So I'm worried that the bridges might get blown out, the trail might get blown out. And in 2030, that sewer pipe that takes everything from the Waunakee district down for the Madison Metropolitan District, 2030, they're supposed to replace that. So that would be a huge construction mess going through there. So if that's also in the plans to figure out how those two would correlate and not interfere with each other, or if we build the trail, it's going to get all ripped out in 4 years, 6 years now anyway. So I just want to make sure that's all being thought about. The expense of trying to put this in, it's going to be a major undertaking. And right now there is bike paths available through the roads on Woodland to get to Dover, to get back up to Division anyway. So to keep that in mind, that we could make that path better on the streets rather than spending probably millions on this path. So thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other comments? No, one more? All right.
I'm Randy Wagner. I live at 1100 Cardigan Bay, which is right at the corner where it crosses over from the Conservancy. You're gonna build a bridge right through our corner of our land, about 10 feet off from our shed. You're gonna blow out a woods there where about 6 or 7 deer live and sleep every night through the winter. We just, in the last year, cut out all the buckthorn that was blocking our exit and built a new prairie right behind her. Cost us about $2,000. When we bought the land 20 years ago, almost now, it was the same issue that everybody said. Conservancy, we're huge bikers. We love biking everywhere, but we've never been on a trail that goes through somebody's backyard. I mean, that place back there, you know, we made a little trail to help the city get back to the sewer grate back there, and we've just kept it pristine. We're not allowed to grow on it or do anything on it, just keep it for all the animals that are there. We have, like you said, we have foxes, we have everything. We have sandhill cranes that live in the backyard or land there. We have every type of nature you could ever imagine. My wife and I are biologists, so we kind of bought the land for that very reason. And a bike trail through the back of there and having 3 bridges crossing 6 Mile Creek is crazy. I mean, you're gonna wreck the whole thing, and especially with asphalt. And like they just spoke about in a second ago, the 100-mile flood line goes right through the middle of our outlot. And it's been flooded 3 times in the last 16 years. Flooded to the point where it came right along the edge of our shed, was underwater and going through our neighbor's yard and almost into their house. Well, part of the problem with that too is if you escalate and build that up in the air even slightly, you're gonna dam off the area and fill our entire backyards with water and make it into a lake. And well, we'll just have to see how they design it, but that was my comments was, it's very, very upsetting, and we're really concerned about what it'll do to our property values with people who we've never seen before. The only people we've ever seen are kayakers who've wiped out around the corner and the rocks, and they've come up through our path that we built out to the 6 Mile Creek. So thank you. That's all I had to say.
Thanks. Any others? Nope. All right, seeing none, let's close the public
And
hearing.
one quick last
Oh,
check.
thank you.
Any hands raised online?
All
Nope.
right. So with that, let's close the public hearing at 7:52. And Brian, I want to hand it back to you if that's okay.
Yeah, I can try to address some of the public comments. First of all, we are very aware of the MMSD easement that is back there. The village and Strand have been working with MMSD, and there's a plan in place to be able allow us to put a path in that also would allow them to move their easement a little bit. So when they have to go in there and do their future work, any path that's constructed wouldn't be negatively affected. You know, just nobody said this specifically. They kind of hinted at this to the extent that the village puts a path in, it wouldn't touch anybody else's property. We wouldn't have that right. And we wouldn't be able to negatively impact anyone's lands, just like any of the other village projects that we do. It would be subject to all the same rules. Just to clarify, the land that's called area to be annexed right now, that if you approve this would become to the village, we have no control over that right now. That would become conservancy, which would allow us to control it. Right now, that is Durst land that is in the town that the village has no control over. So to the extent you want to see a little bit more conservancy, here's one way to do it. Part of the problem with the area to be detached is there's not access. So we've heard comments from members of the public saying nobody's back there. Well, that effectively then creates a waste of village-owned land because it's no village resident can use it. One of the reasons that this has been pursued, up to this point, and at many meetings, this has been discussed, is to allow the village residents and town residents to get access to a trail that would run through there. Whether it would be grass or whether it would be, a constructed path, that's all up to a village board to make at a time when you decide to put a path in, if you approve this. But that's actually one of the reasons why there's the motivation here, is to allow access to village-owned land that we do not have right now. I think the last thing I would say, and no disrespect to any of the comments, I certainly understand where they're coming from. I sat in this room probably 5 or 6 years ago. Many more people here, they didn't want to see a path built that right now leads to the library. And they talked about negative impact on environments and negative impact on animals that live back there. And I talked to Bill earlier with this week, and he says that path is probably the most used path by village residents. Anytime you decide to do something like that, you're always going to impact a small percentage of people who may not like to see it. But the reason why you do it is because you think it's going to have a positive impact on the village as a whole. And that's exactly what happened with that path.
Right. Thank you very much, Brian. All right, I will start the comments on this. We still live at 5842 Woodland, so we backed up to that, and we lived there from 2009 to 2016. And I don't know why I got a wild hair that we needed to downsize as our son was graduating, or as our daughter was graduating. And probably the biggest property regret I have is not keeping that, because we absolutely loved it, and that woods is my kids' childhood memories. It's also public property. Where our lot ends, you go down the hill and the creek is there, and that is all conservancy land. So I totally get not wanting people in your own backyard. They shouldn't be in your backyard, but access to that conservancy is something that we always had. And we had an easement down our side of our yard, so people actually could legally cross through our yard, very private backyard, and into that conservancy, and they did. And we not only saw people that we encouraged the kids in the neighborhood to come through our yard, wave your hand at us, get access to, what is a giant, large natural public park, essentially. So I totally get not wanting people in your backyard. And also this is a really great thing. I've not met the Dursts, but my kids trespassed on their land all the time. They would tube down it and they'd take their tubes out, and because it was easier to get on the grassy side, I assume they rolled them rather quickly and ran, because I never got a phone call from the Dursts about it. So I am looking forward to us annexing this land. What happens after that is probably a matter of budget and time and landscape architects and all sorts of things. Bill, do you have do we have a timeline? Is this on our agenda at all? In the
Not
next
at this
year?
time. I mean, there's a lot yet to consider. Like you said, MSD with their plans, you know, we want to make sure we're coordinating both projects around the same time and making sure we're preserving as much of that area as we can.
Yeah, it's a great area.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, excellent. So other than that, Sam, you got a connection to this land.
So I have a lot of things to say here. First of all, I think it's important for us to remember why we got here. A private property owner illegally built a fence on village land. Sort of goes back to basic physics. Redirecting energy is easier than stopping it and just going and removing the fence. As a comparison, I live in the 6 Mile Creek neighborhood, very close to where that path was built. Let's say, for instance, we have a lot of property owners that encroach onto village land and they mow all the way down to the creek, 150 feet into village land. And Bill and I have gone out and looked at it a number of times, quite frustrated. Well, we could have a property owner one day, because we've talked about extending that trail that was originally planned with our subdivision. Well, we'll do a swap with you. We'll let you have the land down to the creek and you can have a pedestrian easement between you and your neighbors to get down there. That's what I see this as. And basic psychology, positive reinforcement, which is what this would be, rewarding bad behavior. That sets a terrible precedent for other property owners in this community. And I just think, you know, I've heard concerns from other neighbors further up from the ones that spoke here. You know, the Conservancy is our only property that we have that is exclusively grass trails. Runners love that. You start getting bikes in there trying to cut through, you get mud holes, and you have serious drainage problems, and it ruins the integrity of that property. Are there ways that we can improve access? Absolutely. One of the conversations that the Park Commission is going to be having is at the end of Wimbledon Way, potentially putting a third bridge in there at the stub end there. So it's easier for the Public Works Department to get their mowers in there. Certainly we could put another bridge to go to the back of this property, but I do not feel comfortable at all from a moral perspective doing what is in essence rewarding bad behavior on the part of a property owner. I would rather us go in with an end loader tomorrow and take that fence out of there.
Aaron.
Yeah, guess also have a lot of thoughts, but I'll try to keep them brief. This has been something we've worked on for years, and it predates my time on the board, or my lifetime, I think, with the work and the swap. And I agree with Sam. I don't love how we got here. It doesn't sit right that this is, you know, because someone is currently using our land as their land. It's also a very unique scenario, and I think I've said this every meeting we've had about this stuff, that could create a lot of opportunity. I think there's environmental ethics is like the conservation versus preservation versus recreation debate goes on at every level of natural resources and environmental. And I think it's a unique opportunity. None of the motions we have tonight are us approving a path or putting a path in the budget. But if in 20 years, a different board is, you know, presented with the opportunity to do that and it works, giving people access to the outdoors and to natural spaces is the best thing we can do to continue to protect those. I used to explore in Castle Creek. I didn't grow up like in the neighborhood, but it was a place that felt like I was in the middle of nowhere and I could walk my bike and just explore. And, you know, I think that helped instill, you know, a sense of connection to the outdoors and pushed me to explore other places. And I think obviously we will need to include the citizens and the neighbors if we want to, like with the recreational side of this, but to have the creek as public land, I think would be really important, and have that shoreline, and we can better maintain it and better take care of it. Yeah, we need a variety of places that are wild, places that have accessible access, and everything in between. And I think it's not a perfect situation with how we got here, but I just think this is a really unique opportunity that I don't want to go to waste. The public land we had is not being used. There's no way to get to it. And I just think this is much more appropriate.
Thank you, Erin. Tricia?
No, actually, I echo a lot of Erin's thoughts. Oops. Thank you. I echo a lot of Erin's thoughts, and I appreciate the landowners' concerns, the property owners' concerns, and appreciate that you all were here. You know, I think some of the concerns of what this could be, or what this what the potential is when we talk about access to it, I think it's similar to what it is now for the existing trails. I believe that's what the vision would be. It's not the party scene. I mean, I grew up in a small town, and our party scene was not in the edge of town. It was out in some cornfield as far away from town as you could probably get. But I think having that ability to make that connectivity and to provide that just outdoor nature experience. And again, I don't actually know the whole history of how we got here in the fence, like as far as, and other than just reading it through the minutes in the past board notes. But I think this is an opportunity for the village to protect this for the future use.
All right. Thank you, Tricia. Joe?
I just want to start by confirming my understanding, which I think the maps support. Anything to the west of the creek is not anything that we are dealing with here. Is that accurate?
Certainly, you mean, in other words, in the area to be annexed?
Yeah, either the area to be detached or the area to be annexed. Basically, all of that is to the east of the creek. So all of
that's
the-
true. I mean, I guess I don't know exactly where the creek is, but yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
if everything is to the if the creek is that line that's kind of running where it says 6 Mile Creek.
Yep.
Yeah, it's all
Yeah.
east.
So I guess my point to that is there is a lot of natural area between the creek and the homes that exist. I'm not sure that making this change really has any significant effect on that. The path, I think, has potentially a lot of concern, and we need to have a lot more discussion there. We can't even get to that discussion really of whether a path goes there or not until this happens. So that's kind of my thought.
Right, Nyla?
I have quite a bit here. Bill, did I hear correctly that there can be a bridge to get lawnmowers across into the land we currently have in the village for mowing off of Wimbledon?
Yeah, that's being looked at the parks level.
So that could happen even without the swap, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. I had read this someplace, I don't remember reading it in this packet. If this agreement is met with the Durst family, does that mean that their land will always remain in Westport?
Well, their current land would remain in Westport. As part of this, if the detachment is approved and the land is sold, essentially all of their land would go to Westport and all of our land would be in the village.
Okay, so we would potentially be, I mean, is there anything in the agreement that it would always remain that way?
No, theoretically, if they wanted to annex their land into the village at some point in time, they could.
Okay, but we would not be able to annex them in.
Well, that's I mean, typically, we have only annexed property in the village when the property owner has requested it.
Okay,
Now, under the statutes, there are different ways to annex land and force a property owner in, but that's never been done by the village as far as I'm aware.
okay, thank you. there's many jurisdictions with this property: Madison Metropolitan Sewer District, DNR, Waunakee, Westport, the ATC. This will take considerable coordination and work and money. It takes money to build the trails that the engineers, Strand Engineering, came up with. It was over $2 million to come up with this bike path or walking path or whatever you want to call it. I'm all about accessibility, about walking paths, about these forms of recreation, but within reason. I don't understand why we can't have a bridge getting us onto the property that is currently the village's, so that it can be utilized in some way, with the village being able to mow it and people being able to access it the way they would with the going across the bridge for mowing, unless there's a reason that I do not know about, you know, crossing such a thing. I don't know about that. The DNR and the Army Corps of Engineers would have to approve any disturbance of wetlands. And there, I don't know, I'm thinking 3 bridges would be needed, a boardwalk, path in Westport and Waunakee. It's a lot of expense. There's an elevated steep grade. I don't know how we would maneuver that. We'd need a DNR permit to disturb the ground, hydraulics possibly to prevent flooding. And the other question is, we have this issue with the neighbor now, with the Durst family. Can we trust that they will be a good neighbor? I agree with Mr. Luttrell that any decision that's done either way, we need an 8-foot privacy fence. And when I say privacy fence, I don't mean chain link with the cheap plastic things running through it. I mean an 8-foot high privacy fence that is wooden, so some child wouldn't stick their hand through a fence and get it nipped by a horse. So what I'm saying is, I do not support this path because of cost, because of history, because of possible flooding being caused to neighbors. There are so many things that shouldn't happen, and the biggest one, I think, is disturbing a natural place. It's not a case that what is there cannot be utilized. It can be utilized. People can walk it. They can get through there. But we just have to make it work the way it is, instead of going to all of the expense to possibly have something flooded out. That has happened in Middleton. They had a great path that they had to renew, and it was costly to put it up in the first place and costly to rebuild it. Thank you.
All right, but to clarify, we're not talking about building the path today. I understand.
Correct, but the reason we're talking about the swap is to potentially build a path. So I think it's one and the same.
Brian?
Yeah, and I'm not questioning what you're saying, and I just want to make sure you understand the WDNR supports this land swap.
Correct, they do at this time. If we're looking at it 20 years from now, positions change.
All right, Robert?
All right, I'll admit I'm struggling mightily with this one. So I will start with just from a flood perspective, I do find a lot of empathy with the comments about the flooding. I'm looking at FEMA's maps. It's definitely in a floodway that we would be trading out and into. I do think, again, we're not talking about past, but if we're thinking about the goal of this is to have any sort of future development back there, I do worry that we would be one bad storm away from a repeat of some of the damage that was in Pheasant Branch. If you want to talk about something similar for paths that are built in flood zones. Now, that being said, almost the entirety of the park that is currently there is already in a flood zone. You could make an argument that knowing that that area was going to flood, we turned it into a conservancy anyway, just knowing that you wouldn't want to do development there as it is because it's got a creek that floods. The second part, and I do agree with Trustee Kaufman's comments, I struggle a lot with the landowner just deciding to put up a fence. Looking at an overlay map of the zoning map, which their website is wonky tonight for some reason, but I finally managed to get an overlay map on there, and I can see that they clearly have, I heard somebody, Trustee Price said horses, so I assume that's a horse corral that is, they put a good, almost half of it right on village land, and man, that's a bold move to do that and then expect that we are suddenly going to be okay with making a land swap trade with them. That's a hard problem and a hard thing for me to vote for, to have somebody that has that type of mentality, because I don't know what we're gonna, I mean, yes, it goes without saying, if this passes, a fence goes up probably the next day, but we cannot risk having this homeowner just decide, well, I really like that other thing too, I'm just gonna somehow intrude upon that. I feel like if they've done it once, and they've done it for as long as they have and nothing has happened, kind of shame on the village for not going in there and knocking this fence down and honestly finding them every day until they get off the land. So, in regards to the conservancy on the back of people's yards, and I say this as a biker and somebody who uses a lot of trails around that area, I don't think it's the best for biking. I would never say put a bike back there. I wish that we shouldn't have bikes in grass paths anyway. Again, pulling from Pheasant Branch, they don't allow bikes in the grass paths. They only allow it on the gravel paths. So I don't think we'd have bikes. As far as people walking back there and enjoying it, I do think that if we did reclaim the land that is already ours, with apologies to the landowners in attendance, I do think that people should be able to walk back there and view nature in a respectful way on just a grass path. But the fact that we haven't done that for all the years that we could have done that speaks volumes to me. So I'm not sure that I'm looking to make a new area where there is no need to have a new area. So at this point, I'm really struggling with how this makes sense in the long term.
Aaron.
I think part of the, support for the path, and none of these are even us putting the path, but I think the path creates such a unique opportunity because it's not just to get people to Castle Creek. If we can get people to Mill Road through this, you have such a great opportunity for further public land all the way to Governor Nelson and all the DNR land out there. And I think that's what's on my mind. And it's like, yes, this is a beautiful place and it's amazing, but it just really does open up an opportunity for someone to be able to connect other places. Like I think of that little connector trail in Madison that now you can ride your bike into Governor Nelson on the north side, and just like creates more accessibility for the land that is public and it is everybody's, and helps them appreciate it and hopefully then want to maintain it because they have a connection and it also becomes important to them. And I think when we can have that like collective ownership over our public land, it's better for the preservation and conservation of all public land. But so that's like, this is such a unique little spot that yes, it's like this little bit of trail, but it just really connects a lot of other possibilities and other beautiful places. So
Can I add a couple things?
Yeah.
So I actually used to work as a trail planner and developer. That was my specialty for about 5 years. So many trails are in floodplains, which are tightly controlled by the DNR. But it's one of the ways that the DNR can assert control over the floodplain is by allowing for paths of certain engineering standards. It doesn't mean that they're going to necessarily let it happen, but the DNR is in support of this, partially because, and it says in the letter that's in your packet, the natural value of this land to be annexed is much higher than the natural value of the area to be detached. So even though it's not a one-to-one swap in terms of acreage, it is a one-to-one swap in terms of value. And to what Aaron was talking about, in my experience as an outdoor educator, the best way to create conservationists and preservationists is to increase access to natural public spaces. And if we wanted to do that, but say in the area to be detached, it would take a lot of work from our public works and parks departments to return that to the state that it was 30, 40 years ago that someone had mentioned had previously been there in Prairie. And especially with the habitat that's potentially there, again, it goes down to the engineering and the DNR controls. This is if a trail, if Village Board decided that they wanted to explore putting a trail there, it's not something that's going to happen overnight. You're talking about years of engineering and regulatory processes and environmental assessments. So it would be, there would be years of people to give input on either side of the issue that we don't know tonight. But what we do know is that this is, from a natural standpoint, very valuable land that the DNR would like to see in public hands.
Brian.
I just want to try to answer some of Robert's points, because what you brought up was initially how we were going to approach it, affected. And I know that a letter was drafted. I'm not sure if it was sent. That was basically, get your fence off our land, and if you don't get it off, we're going to start, it's going to be a code violation each day, and eventually we'll take it down and you're going to get charged for it. I think the reason why pause was put on that, my understanding, was effectively twofold. One, we noticed, hey, wait a second, we can't get this land by condemnation anymore. So maybe the village board wants it this way, understanding the concerns with the fact that somebody had clearly done something wrong. The other part is, at a staff level, we weren't sure how we would approach all of the other stuff that is on our land, because I can tell you, if Waunakee is like every other municipality in Dane County, there is playground structures and backfield backstops for baseball on our property that shouldn't be there. And, obviously we've been kind of looking the other way because we can, and because that's better for the community to do that. But at some point in time, you run into, wait a second, if you're not going to knock somebody's fence down because it's on your property, and you have a right to do that, no question. And if you all don't want to move forward with this tonight, that's going to be the step that's going to be taken. Letters are going to be sent. We're going to say, you got to take down this fence. What are we going to do with all of the other property where we have stuff that's on it right now?
I'm glad that you brought that up, because I was thinking of, I know the school district has some people near a school that shall remain nameless to not upset anybody, but I know that was an issue with them, with exactly as you said, there was like equipment that was on the school district's property, and they were wondering, some of their board was wondering why they weren't doing anything with it. I will just differentiate, though. There is a huge difference between a play structure or backstop going over the line and again, whatever this
A
structure
significant
is.
onerous violation of our property.
Yeah, and so I think something, and again, I know I'm coming in way late on this, but I feel like even though there is a one-to-one land swap, and I agree 100% with the appraiser, I'm not questioning DNR. I just feel like we should be getting something more from the Durst in exchange for years of us not enforcing it, doing it. Some might say, well, that's not fair, but I mean, it just, again, this is a very bitter pill.
I'd say it's fair, but I don't know that it's possible with that.
And that's what I'm saying. I don't know if it's possible. I'm just saying that seems like something that that's a lot of land.
Yeah. I will say I may or may not have had a zip line that ran through there. But yes, the thing I would look forward to if we annexed this is, it isn't a floodplain. It is turf grass right now. And I would imagine that we would want to, I'm looking at you, Tim, in the back, prairie grass and other things that are a little bit more soil stabilizing in there. I think we could really have some positive effect on the environment. When you're looking at that 6 Mile Creek corridor, this is the missing tooth. We've got a really wonderful wildlife corridor that goes all the way through 6 Creek, and then you have a yard. I mean, a traditional yard, and it's great. It's a beautiful traditional yard, but you don't necessarily see the wildlife that you see in the other parts of 6 Mile Creek in that particular area. So go ahead, Aaron.
Yeah, I think Brian explained it well of why a few years ago when this was brought up, like I had no idea that there was a fence there that was our land. And I remember being like, well, yeah, get rid of it. And then we stopped and it was like, okay, well, what if kind of, and I think to comment on like the 1B1, and obviously this went through the DNR had to approve it, assessing the, how much land, and part of me just gets annoyed in the sense of like, we've monetized the natural resources to the extent where we can say this is worth this and this is worth that. So if anything, that improves to me more of like the importance of those intangible values of the land and creating connection with, besides how much is this land actually worth? It's worth so much more than just like a monetary value to have someone like take care of it and receive the positive benefits of spending time in the outdoors. I think that no one knew there was a fence there because no one was actively using our public land or couldn't get to it. And I think that is a big point for me of like, we have this nice sizable parkland of Waunakee that's just cornered in there and you can't get to it. And so it maybe wasn't obvious. It's not like soccer equipment left at a park or something. It's, yes, a really large fence and being used, but this land is not being used in the same way that our other parks and, public areas are. So I don't know. Sorry, I get a
Thank
little
you. No,
riled
that's
up,
great.
but it's been years of back and forth,
Yeah,
and I think
with
it's.
Any other questions or comments? If we're looking at making motions, Brian, looking at this long list, you were saying that some are majority, some are 6 votes, 5
Well,
votes.
so this is what I believe you should do. I think you should go down your list and have separate motions and probably roll calls on each. I'm kind of counting votes right now.
Mhm.
And at a staff level, we tried to approach this from the standpoint of what makes the most sense. At the end of the day, the only thing that really needs to happen here is, and it's not on your agenda, so you're not going to talk about it because after you're done with your votes, then we're going to have to get together at a staff level and then probably talk to a few people. The only thing that needs to happen is a sale of land. One from the Durst to us, and from the certified survey maps don't need to be approved. The detachment doesn't need to be approved. The annexation doesn't need to be approved. And it only takes a simple majority to do a land sale. Now, again, we approach this from the standpoint of, at a staff level, we've understanding that the village board can disagree with us, certainly. But the best way to approach this, if there's going to be a land sale, is the way that we have it laid out. So I think you should vote on it, and we'll have to react to this at a staff level and talk to the town and talk to the property owners, depending on what your votes are.
All right, so we're going to run the agenda. I'll make a motion to approve the annexation ordinance conditioned upon the sale of the properties to and from the village of Waunakee and Crest and Sharon Durst.
Second.
Right, any discussion on the motion?
Just clarification. So this one is a 2/3 vote?
This is 2/3, yes.
Okay.
So this one, for it to pass, it would require 5 votes.
One more question, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So Brian, for the annexation and the detachment, for any of the items that we talked about later, how much of a factor do those 2 items play?
In other words, to swap the land and build a path doesn't require literally approval of any of these motions. It would just be, that would make the most sense. If you are going to in fact swap the lands, it would make sense for us to have one lot that we owned combined in one CSM. It would make sense for us to annex our own land into the village if we're going to own it. It would make the most sense to do the vice versa with their land, have all of their land. If you do this and that area to be detached goes to the Durst, you're not losing any property value because it doesn't have any property value right now. So that's why we approached it this way. But, and so I guess they're all related, but they're all not related because, this may come back to you at some point in time. And, the example I would give, and this is all in open session, and, City of Verona at one point in time, there's either a Goodwill or a St. Vincent de Paul that's sitting on Main Street. And the Common Council chose to not approve a change to their architectural structure that the city staff supported because it was going to increase the increment value of the TIF. Common Council voted it down. Goodwill's still there because you couldn't keep Goodwill from going there. It was zoned properly. So that's kind of an analogous situation where you take action, But what you do tonight, at the end of the day, I mean, if we do have 4 votes on some of these items, that suggests to me that a majority of the village board would like to swap the land. So we're gonna have to go back to the property owners and say, look, under the circumstances, and I don't know what the votes are gonna be right now. But let's assume for a second that the annexation ordinance doesn't pass, the detachment ordinance doesn't pass, but the certified survey maps, the rezone, and then the rezonings will still act on them. They may become mute. At the end of the day, if 4 people are voting in favor of this, at some point in time, if the property owner wants it to come back to you, we're gonna come back to you with a land swap. And the path can still be built. Now, and then again, that would be a decision for a future village board as to, are you gonna put a path there? If you're gonna put a path there, what's it gonna look like? All of the questions, or some of the questions that were raised by the property owners. But you know, I mean, I'm reading the votes right now, the detachment ordinance is not gonna pass. And so we're gonna go to the Durst and we're gonna say, you still wanna do this deal if part of your land is in the village and part of your land is in the town. And if the annexation ordinance doesn't pass, well, you guys have kind of made that decision for yourselves then, but the land swap probably will come back to you at some point in time in the near future. And I know that's a lot of information and I know we have a lot going on here, but trust me when I say that we set this up because if you wanted to approve all of these things, this would be the most appropriate way to go about doing it.
If we don't approve it, things stay as they are.
Right now, things stay as they are.
Across that, their mowed lawn area to be annexed to get to the area to be detached, which we own. The fence doesn't come down unless we decide we're gonna go.
And that's essentially the next discussion with the village board of, because you could all decide, you know what? I don't really care what my vote was on that night. I've changed my vote and now my vote is I want that fence coming down, which means you wouldn't approve the land swap and you would say, go to it, village staff, you know, let's get this fence down. The last thing I'll say though is I have always been told that we do not have access to this land. So now maybe things have changed and maybe there's the ability to build a bridge somewhere, but consistently from elected officials and from staff from both the village and the town, I have always been told that one of the reasons for doing this is we don't have access to this land. And that may have changed based on some of the questions that Nyla has asked, but just to be clear. But you have a motion and a second on the annexation ordinance right now.
All right.
And a
It's
roll
time to
call
vote.
vote. Nyla Fry,
No.
Trisha Brown,
Yay.
Sam Kaufman.
No.
Kristen Rungy,
Yes,
Aaron Moran,
Yes.
Joe Zisselsberger,
Yes.
Robert McPherson.
No.
So that, just to be clear, that does not pass.
it's not passed. All right. Is there a point in the rest of the?
I think you
Consider?
should still go through the process just to let us know what's going on as we move forward.
I make a motion to approve the detachment ordinance conditioned upon the sale of properties to and from the village of Waunakee and Frist and Sharon Durst.
Second.
Any discussion on the motion? All right, roll call vote. Carla?
Nyla Fry,
No.
Trisha Brown,
Yes.
Sam Kaufman.
No.
Kristen Rungy,
Yes.
Aaron Moran,
Yes.
Joe Zisselsberger,
Yes.
Robert McPherson.
Abstention.
Okay, so that vote does not pass.
Motion to approve the certified survey maps for the village of Waunakee property and for the Frist and Sharon Durst property conditioned upon the sale of the properties to and from the village of Waunakee and Frist and Sharon Durst.
Second.
Nyla Fry,
No.
Trisha Brown,
Yes.
Sam Kaufman.
No.
Kristen Rungy,
Yes,
Aaron Moran,
Yes.
Joe Zisselsberger,
Yes.
Robert McPherson.
Yes.
So I actually, because you did not approve the annexation ordinance and because you did not approve the detachment ordinance, the zoning classifications that have been identified wouldn't apply because the Durst zoning classification would be what they have right now in the town. And if in fact this occurred, they would have to be under village zoning and vice versa. So I think we need to regroup. We need to come back to you, have to have a discussion at some, potentially about a sale or not take down the fence, because that's clearly in play.
Mhm.
And when we bring that back to you, we would have the potential rezonings as part of that discussion.
all right.
Can Am I allowed to make
Yeah.
any comments? Since
I think so.
Uh,
Yeah.
if it's at all possible to have the landowners here to discuss with the board, and if there is anything, and maybe this requires closed session, I don't know, but any sort of negotiation that can be done, if you want my honest opinion on what would change my vote to a yes, is we need to have a further discussion about years of just ignoring a landline. I'm sorry. I know that everybody wants to move on from this, but I feel like there needs to be some sort of remediation or redress if we're going to take this seriously.
All right. I'm glad that you shared that, so we know. All right.
And we can, obviously we can do that. Yep.
Okay. All right. With that, that ends this item on the agenda. All right. Next up, we have, let's see here. All the way back up to the top of my agenda. It's been a long agenda packet. We are on page 219 of 297, so we're still not done yet. Next item, discuss and take action on initial resolution authorizing the borrowing of not to exceed 9.04 million and providing for the issuance and sale of general obligation promissory notes series 2024A. And Renee, is that you?
Yeah, we have
Todd?
Todd and Tammy from Ellers here that are gonna go through this, well, the next two agenda items. Just wanted to mention that as has been our practice of late, we tend to borrow every other year to realize some savings on issuance costs and that type of thing. So the projects that are in this borrowing were already discussed and basically approved during the 2024 budget process. So this is just the formal step to initiate this borrowing. So I will turn it over to Todd.
Thanks, Renee. And we can go to the next slide. And prior to the meeting, Renee distributed a formal pre-sale report, so I'm just going to hit a few high points here. But that will have additional detail in it. So as Renee mentioned, this is your approved list of projects for both this year as well as next year, totaling to 9,180,000. Most notably, it does include 5.3 million for the police building addition. So this borrowing seems a bit larger than what you're accustomed to every other year. Other large projects include the contribution to the street resurfacing program in both years between the police station, the road resurfacing. You know, that's roughly 2/3 of the issue. And then you've got a variety of other projects that require debt financing as well. Just a few notes about the instrument we'll be issuing. This will be a general obligation promissory note. Due to the types of projects we're paying for, this can be issued on a tax exempt basis, which provides for a lower interest rate. You will be pledging a irrevocable pledge of property taxes as security for the debt offering. That makes this a general obligation issue. We will be issuing it for the maximum statutory term of 20 years. When you issue municipal bonds, you normally have a earliest date at which you can prepay or refinance. That's roughly halfway through the maturity schedule. In this case, what we are looking at as a date of June 1st of 2033. You'd be locked into that payment structure until that date. Any date thereafter, you would be able to redeem all or portion of the remaining bonds. We would be taking this to market as a competitive public offering. So much like a public works project, on the day of sale, we'll take bids from interested underwriting firms across the country. And the basis for award would be what is called the true interest cost, which is a combination of the interest rate, what's called the underwriting discount, which I'll mention in a moment on the next slide, all adjusted for the time value of money. So there, we will come back and say this is the underwriter that has the lowest true interest cost and would recommend the award to that firm. And next slide, Renee. So the resolution is for 9,040,000. So I mentioned you need 9,180,000 for projects. Plus we have various cost of issuance, our fee, your bond attorney, which is Hush Blackwell. We will be required to get a updated credit rating as part of this process.
The village uses Moody's Investor Service. You're presently rated a AA2. There is a small fee for a paying agent. And then I mentioned earlier the underwriting discount. This is what we refer to as an allowance. So when the underwriter is bidding, this represents the maximum compensation that they can take for their role underwriting the transaction. But again, the lowest combination of interest rate and discount feeds into that true interest cost. So we will typically see that underwriting discount come in less. So when we look at the 9,180,000 and we're down to the 9,040,000, we're issuing less bonds than we have projects. And that's where Tammy's going to come in a moment here. But because this is 2 years worth of projects, and including the police building, which is 2025, where interest rates presently are, you have a great opportunity to earn some fairly significant interest earnings on the temporary investment of those proceeds. On the pre-sale report and for purposes of the resolution, we have 350,000. Tammy's got a slide in a moment that pegs that even a little bit higher. And we'll actually adjust that on the day of sale to whatever the market is yielding at the time. But based on the 350, we come up with 9,040,000 on a not to exceed basis, and that matches the resolution you have before you this evening. This represents on the left side, the existing debt of the village. So that's your total payment. The existing debt offsets, that's primarily tax increment district. So it's general obligation debt, but you're applying tax increments to offset portions of those payment. Also some utility debt in there, and we come up with a net levy. The proposed debt then shows the structure of this particular bond offering. And what we're doing here is we're amortizing this with level payments starting in the year 2027, so roughly 620,000 per year on an estimated basis. I did want to note that you'll notice we have some irregular payments in the first couple years. And based on the 10-year capital improvement plan, what we're doing is we will manipulate the amount of principal that will be repaid on the day of sale once we know the actual interest rates, so that you will have about $100,000 step up in your total debt service levy in 25 and in 26. And then we've got a drop in 27. In 26, we would expect you to do your next 2-year borrowing, and we'll have additional debt service that will fill in 27. So in other words, we're ramping up a little bit in recognition of what your overall 10-year CIP looks like. And then we're dropping back down to layer in that next issue. And that's why that looks a little strange on the first couple of years. Just give you a sense where rates are. If you look at a 10-year average, we're really right about where the market has been over the last 10 years, and that's even skewed a bit low. We had this period, obviously, when you borrowed last, where we had monetary policy that was pushing interest rates close to zero. Obviously, back in a more normal scenario right now, it seems relatively high, but again, just wanted to give you a sense of where rates are right now. This is a little bit misleading in the sense that it represents the yield literally on a bond that matures in 20 years and also is based sort of on a national market. Right now, based on our planning run and what we're seeing on sales right now for a 20-year issue, we would expect your true interest cost to come in just under around 4% if we were doing it today. In fact, 395 is what we had in the planning run. And in terms of schedule, we're here this evening. Should you wish to proceed, we do have a call scheduled with Moody's on May 20th. On or about May 24th, we would push the offering document, which we're in the process now of gathering information from your staff to assemble. That would be around May 24th. And I will be back on June 3rd with the bids in hand for your consideration. And the village would receive the money on or about June 26th of this year. And happy to answer any questions you may have.
All right, thank you. What questions do we have? Let's start. Nyla.
None at this time.
Robert? Trisha?
Nope.
Joe? Sam?
None.
Aaron?
No, just thank you for the presentation and educating us, but
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. All right. No further questions or discussion then. I believe we have a recommended motion.
I'll move to approve the initial resolution authorizing the borrowing of not to exceed $9,040,000 and providing for the issuance and sale of general obligation promissory notes series 2024A.
I'll second it.
All right, any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, motion carries. All right, next item on the agenda. Now we're on page 261. And this is discuss and take action on resolution engaging Ayler's Investment Partners as investment advisor and approving the opening of custodial credit accounts with Pershing Advisor Solutions LLC.
Thank you. And Renee, if I could have you switch
Oh,
to the
yep.
next slide. Thank you. Oh, perfect. So as Todd had mentioned to you during his presentation, you essentially receive all of these funds on day of closing. And then you have to determine how to handle them, what to do with them until you need them for your project. So I am part of your team. You probably haven't met me in the past, but you see Todd a lot. Very similar to Todd, I'm a fiduciary for the village. I work on your behalf. Just like he's working for you to obtain the lowest cost of borrowing, I am working for you to obtain the highest interest cost on the funds while they sit idle until you need them. So the reason for this at this point is you are issuing during a time when interest rates on the investment side are very high. Issuing debt on a tax exempt status, you still receive some unique benefits. So when you issue tax exempt debt, you have some IRS responsibilities or compliance parameters. So because you are getting the advantage of issuing tax exempt debt, you also must follow these arbitrage compliance requirements. Now, as Todd had mentioned, your true interest costs, they expect to be under 4%. Your arbitrage yield, or the yield with which you have to comply with from an investment standpoint, is going to be significantly lower than what you are even seeing in cash rates. What I mean by that is when you issue this debt, you essentially are restricted on the investment earnings that you may receive unless you meet a few exceptions or follow certain rebate requirements. So when we invest these proceeds, and one of the benefits that we have provided to the village is really guiding you through what to do with those funds. So as I mentioned, you get them all in closing. You can place them in a variety of very restrictive investment vehicles. We have a couple of approaches, and we did provide a few different options to your team here just to show you nothing is set in stone. So even if you approve us tonight, we don't look at this and say, okay, this is what we're definitely doing. It really comes down to what's going on in the market. As Todd had mentioned, those investment earnings are helping to save you a little bit on the actual issuance, but it's also going to be very important that we can get as close to what we have estimated as possible so that you have enough to cover all of your projects. One of the ways that we actually get there is through the specific investment vehicles. So one of the things on here that I think is extremely important to note, you are very likely on any investment vehicle, even if you hold it in cash, to have what's called positive arbitrage. That just means that you've earned too much on the actual investment. You are not in compliance with what they call the IRS rebate requirements, and you may have to pay money back. Not a problem as long as you are aware of it and planning for it, or if you meet certain exceptions, knowing how to track those exceptions, as well as anticipating what that rebate may look like. So that's really the key here, and that's why we have been engaged, just to guide you through those decisions. So if we take a peek at that next page, one of the things that I like to highlight, as an investment professional, I am a little different than a traditional financial advisor that you may work with. I am very restricted to state statute as well as village policy. So one of the things that you owe all of your constituents is management of the funds or the treasury on behalf of the village and all of your tax base, making sure that the money is managed prudently. That's where I come in. My role for your team or for your finance team is really to be a fiduciary, provide that guidance and expertise. I bring a number of resources beyond just, say, calling your local bank. But at the end of the day, regardless of how you choose to handle these, your key objectives really are safety, liquidity, and then yield. So we always focus on state statute and your own policy, keep you compliant, in addition to making sure that we try to guide you through the decisions related to IRS compliance. When we invest these proceeds, it's limited to things such as U.S. Treasury obligations. Other municipalities issue debt. You can purchase municipal debt obligations with certain parameters. You can purchase U.S. government agency securities, bank CDs. We do price through local banks, regional banks, and compare that to a national market. So we provide you market access that's broader than just your local or regional banks. Looking at the other there are a lot of things that go behind this from a policy standpoint and making sure that you're on track with everything. As I mentioned, we want to look to investment vehicles that will get you some predictability. So if you look, for example, at a liquid investment vehicle that maybe fluctuates with actual yield, it's not a fixed rate, you may or may not hit your investment target. So because you are sizing your debt based upon this, our recommendation is actually not to look at a variable rate product, but to look at a fixed rate product. Those fixed rate products will provide you at closing an estimate of where your income will be. Do I anticipate rates to change? Yes. Do I think they're going to change dramatically between now and June? Not likely. So we feel pretty confident in the numbers that we've provided. We actually see you getting closer to about $400,000 based upon current market conditions. Even after the fee that we do charge, which I'll touch on in a moment, you will far exceed your $350,000 that we use to estimate. So we go to the next page there. I should also explain, differently than a traditional financial advisor, we work only with municipalities. So we have all of our systems, our accounting procedures, everything that we provide to your finance team as far as reporting or statements is tailored to municipal governments. So if you are looking at these financial statements every month, they're designed so that you have all of the information that you need to meet your civic duties. So we work for you. We build in this cash flow forecasting. So every month you get a report of what's coming due, what is going to be owed to you as far as income, and you'll be able to see that looking out 12 months. We can provide longer terms as well, but from a planning standpoint, especially as you go through the projects, it's good for you to see that you have the liquidity when you need to make those payments. If we take a peek at the next page here, this is really just a basic chart of based upon the current schedule of projects, the current interest rate environment. This is about what we expect to see. So the estimated income is it's actually just under $400,000. Our fee, so one of the things that we do, just like you're paying a fee to issue your debt, we charge an ongoing management fee. And a lot of that is due to us providing that ongoing reporting, tracking from a compliance standpoint, and making sure that if investments need to be reinvested or held longer than anticipated, we're guiding you through that. We don't charge you any other fees. We don't charge you transaction fees. There's no fee if you need money sent to your bank to cover project expenses. So this is all inclusive of that fee. And I should also point out this fee could be higher or lower depending upon your actual schedule. So if let's just say we don't want to even say this out loud, but let's just say it goes on an extra 6 months, there may be a few extra months of service fees in there. If it is accelerated and for some reason we get a really nice spring next year and things get ahead of schedule, your fee may decrease. So if we take a peek at the last page here, as I had mentioned, it's important that we're very transparent with what that fee is. To give you an idea, most of our investment earnings estimates on those maturities are at or above 5%. We're charging you 0.25%. So very transparent. We want to make sure you see that. Every month you will get an invoice from us so you can approve it, you see it. But it comes right out of the investment earnings. So you don't actually have to write a check. I should also point out, we have a copy of the investment advisory agreement in your packet. If you really want to read through it, feel free. You are not obligated to any time length or term. You are also not obligated to keep the funds with us once they're invested. They are in the village's name. They are transportable if need be. And you are not obligated to that contract. You can terminate it at any time. So I always like to point that out for you. Are there any other questions or thoughts?
No, thank you for the presentation. What questions do we have? Sam? Tricia?
Nothing. That's actually fascinating and some of the information. Thank you.
Nyla?
Just thank you for the presentation.
Aaron?
No, thank you.
Joe?
Very straightforward.
Robert?
Yeah, I'm good. I was gonna,
And if questions or concerns
I'm
come
a
up,
banker, so I was
right.
like, but I'm
no,
good.
feel
I'll
free to
stop.
send them our way. If, you can always pose those questions to us.
Yeah, this is great, really comprehensive. I'm going to make a motion to approve the resolution engaging Ehlers Investment Partners as investment advisors and approving the opening of custodial accounts with Pershing Advisor Solutions, LLC.
Second.
All right, any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you for coming tonight. All right, next up, committee appointments. So, page 279 out of 297. Look at all the good work we're doing tonight. All right.
Meat and potatoes.
All right, a couple things. So Erin is taking over for Nyla on Senior Services Committee. Nyla requested to step down from that committee and free some time up in her schedule since she's on sustainability. And that leaves us with an opening for Village Center for a board member. I don't know if anyone wants to step forward or if you want to look at your schedules and think about it, and we can visit that another week.
What's on here?
It's different
Okay.
than what's on here. Yeah. Yeah.
I
So-
would be interested.
in Village Center?
Yes.
All right. So Joe for Village Center. And then, we've done something different with Board of Zoning Appeals. We have not in recent memory had a board member on, Board of Zoning Appeals, but, I have appointed Robert on that. And I don't know if we want to discuss that change or if we want to accept the slate of candidates as, offered. So, yes, Nyla.
I was previously on Board of Appeals. I would like to know why the change is being made as far as having a board member on the committee.
Yeah, we had, so we do have three alternates on the committee right now, two alternates on the committee. I'm looking at, I've two. We had one application for that from a citizen member. We do have an appeal case that is coming up relatively soon, and I think we have 21 days to address it. Is that correct, Carla?
I don't know the specifics off the top of my head.
Yeah, it's a time.
It makes
request.
sense then.
Yeah,
Okay.
so looking around at who has a potential availability in their schedule and who is interested. Robert has many times mentioned that he likes zoning and parking and whatnot, so. Yeah, so that in Carla and I talking, we kind of exchanged ideas back and forth, so. Yes, so comments though, because it is a change.
I will say, because Kristen and I had a quick conversation about it. Other municipalities do have, not that we should do whatever everybody else is doing, but there are other municipalities have trustees that serve on them. I think it was just a Waunakee thing that we didn't.
Thank you.
I have no problem with it whatsoever.
If you want to have more meetings, that's fine. with me.
All right, any other concerns?
My only concern would be if there's any potential conflict of interest there. I have faith that Robert will handle it as need be. I guess the other thought that I would have is if we're adding a trustee there, could that potentially cascade down to others? Board of Review that has a vacancy, whatever else might happen to be here.
We could consider doing that. Board of Review doesn't have anything going on right now, and so I'd kick that one down the road.
Well, and also, I mean, there are certain, like for the zoning board of appeals, it's a statutory body and there's no restriction that would prohibit a village board member. Now, I don't know off the top of my head but there are certainly other statutory bodies where we are restricted in how we can appoint people. So not to say that we can't, can't do that, but for our own standing committees, we have complete control. For statutory committees, we always have to check the statutes to make sure we're abiding by them.
Sure.
I think the other important aspect is, which was mentioned earlier, is it can't hurt to have one of us on the Board of Appeals, because if something's coming up before the Board of Appeals where people are keeping changing, then maybe we need to talk about changing the zoning code for something. Obviously, depending on what it is.
I do strongly believe in the rule of if you have 10% or more exceptions, it's now your policy, so.
I will say you're going to get to participate in the things that tug on your heartstrings. Because I think the last time that we had,
That was a
seriously, I
tough
think the
one.
last time that we had a variance request and it was granted, it had to do with something that was necessary for a property because of a child that was disabled. And so it does get to you.
It can be a very important role to
But it
play.
encourages creativity.
Nothing is black and white.
All right. Any other discussions? Anybody wanting to get off every board and have all their nights free? So, no.
I did have a question on the
Yeah.
citizen committee appointments.
Mhm.
I've infrequently had citizens reach out or when speaking with them in public, I should say, reach out, that have mentioned that they don't really hear back from the village if they haven't been appointed to something. Is it
We-
possible that we can?
We can, yeah. And so last year was my first year doing this.
It's not just
um,
you, by the way, this is.
Yeah, yeah, this is a consistent thing.
Yeah.
We keep the applications on file, so nobody's application ever really ages out. So it's not that they've not been appointed, it's that they've not been appointed, it's been, that they've not yet been appointed, and not that everybody gets appointed. But I think we probably should reach out and say, hey, thank you, we're keeping your application on file. We appreciate you applying, we'll send that out.
Okay.
I think that's a
They just
reasonable
need to
suggestion,
close
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So just to clarify, you want an email or a letter to go out to those that have applied for a committee but have not been appointed?
Yeah, and I can craft that, and it will state in it too that, appointments are ongoing. We frequently have things
Okay.
that come up that we need to appoint.
And we
people.
could perhaps also offer, we have some vacant alternate
Mhm.
positions on here. We have some, if you are interested in these.
Yeah.
We do have these that are
Mhm.
available for you if you'd like one, so then they aren't sitting empty either.
I do consult with the department chairs. I don't, or department heads. I don't, I try not to randomly appoint
Yeah.
people. I make sure that they're reviewing them. So we can definitely offer that to people, but it's not a guarantee.
Yeah, but
because
just
there's an
this,
opening.
because those are things that maybe people applied for specific things, and it's like, well. If you are interested in these, then reach out and perhaps we can fill that.
If they didn't want to watch into hour 3 of tonight's meeting to see how we.
Yeah, exactly.
Gripping drama. This is like quality.
This is
prestige
great for our
television right
public
here.
access television
Yeah.
viewers.
All right, we probably need a motion to approve these. So
A motion to approve the board, commission and committee appointments as recommended by the village president.
I'll second that.
with the exception
sorry,
of Aaron.
With the change of Aaron Moran to the Senior Services Committee and Nyla Frystruck from the Senior Services Committee.
And Joe added to the
And
village.
Joe added to the Village Center Advisory Committee.
And
Youngest
al-
ones get to be on the senior committee.
Do.
and also you saw that the citizen committee had the tourism person
Yes.
added. It was not in the last version 3 of the packet. So
Okay.
that's why I put one on your table. That was the only difference.
Oh. It's still accepted that this is the one that I was
Okay.
Wait,
approving though, right?
Yeah.
I don't need to amend the
It would just, it would just be for the ones that she approved to include. I wanted to make sure you guys are aware of the tourism.
Do you want me to add that to the motion or?
I do have one
Yes.
question on that, actually. Does that person, because that person does live outside the village limits, do they have to be a village resident to be on that committee?
Does this person live outside?
That person lives on Walden Bay Drive, which is in Westport.
Some of them are based on like their expertise, I think.
This is a represent.
Yeah, and they do, okay, so they're a motel representative, right? Okay, thank you for clarifying.
And Aaron has just volunteered to be on the tourism committee.
Sure. if
So
you find
were
me.
you serious about that?
Yeah,
Yeah,
if
okay.
we allow it, but I don't know.
Let's
Uh,
double back.
I'll make sure that's
Okay.
allowed.
All right.
We can wait.
All right. Well, let's wait for the next meeting until that one. So the motion Carla, could you repeat the motion? Or should we just vote
Well, I,
It's the sheet that you have in front
Yeah.
of you
with,
with the person adds tourism, and then Aaron moved
To
to.
Senior.
Services.
Turn your mic.
Committee,
Yep.
And Joe added to Village Center Advisory.
thank you.
And Nyla removed from senior service.
And then-
yes.
All right, it's so moved, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. All right. Next item on the agenda. Discuss and take action on modifying year-round office hours for Village Hall services, page 282.
I kind of think like the way the vibe is going, I should throw out some really wacky hours and see how. it goes.
Yeah.
7 PM to 12 AM.
7 a.m. till 10 a.m. every day. Yeah.
You've got the memo, I mean, and you all know the swap hour situation that we have summer to winter. Whether it's the summer or the winter, the post noon hours on Fridays it's a cricket scenario here in the building. I pulled together the entire village hall staff, I don't know, 4-5 months ago. And I just gave them the task. I said, if you could like just shake everything up and arrange what you think might be the best way to approach hours here, service, tell me what that might be. Gave everybody a couple months, got back together. And what you see here is what the team, the village hall team collectively would recommend, which is to have universal year-round hours with the closure, is it noon? Friday at noon. It doesn't mean that we won't necessarily always conclude our work at noon on Friday. In fact, some staff said that that gives a quiet time perhaps to get a whole lot done that they otherwise wouldn't. It also gives a chance to schedule meetings. There's still room there for work on Friday afternoons. There will also be the times of the year when we will be open because we have to be open. Elections and tax collection season, you would still see some Friday afternoon hours. So that's the recommendation. We think it'll avoid additional confusion, and staff would appreciate that tweak for their own personal circumstances too.
All right. Comments, Aaron?
No, I think if this helps our village staff be happier in their jobs and more productive, then I think it's a good idea.
All right, Sam?
I have no problem with it. I think it's less confusing for the public. I also think if people are concerned about reduced hours, I mean, many other municipal halls, whatever, they open at 8 a.m. We are opening at 7 a.m. So that I don't think that anybody's gonna have a problem with this at all.
Joe?
In light of Todd's comment about Fridays being a cricket scenario, I think if we could, maybe have Bill get an exterminator in here, that'd be great. No, I have no problems with this whatsoever.
Dad joke.
Yep, it's dad joke for sure.
Tricia?
No, just would the utility office follow suit with this?
They already do.
What they do? Oh. Shows how much I know.
So we're following suit with them. So, Robert?
Nope, I've read this first one. I was like, man, they're going a 32-hour work week. How progressive, but no, I'm fine with that.
Can we?
Yes.
Some places.
Let's discuss that next year, yeah.
Nyla?
I'm going to be the odd man out here because I want our employees to be content and happy too. I'm from a different generation. One of the complaints I've heard throughout many years, long before I was on the board, is that Village Hall isn't open when I can get to the office, meaning that when people get home from work, the Village Hall isn't open. So to add Friday afternoons to this year round, I think would just make it more complicated. I think one of the things that the village is going to is, and the whole world is, but we need to understand that the whole world, everybody in this town or any place does not use a cell phone as an extension of their hand. We have already decided to have our quarterly information sent out mostly by internet. We do get some published, but I'm wondering, when are you going to decide to quit publishing that? There are people who still consider the internet use to get service as self-service. In other words, they don't consider it service at all. I just wanted to make that comment. You need another point of view other than those of you who have been using computers all your life. The opening up or opening the village at 7 o'clock in the morning really doesn't help a young family who's up at 5:30 in the morning trying to get themselves ready so then they can get their children up and get ready for school. How the heck would they get down here to do their business before they go to work? When they get home from work, we are not open. Those are just a few of my thoughts, but I think there's a lot more to consider here than, and not only that, many years ago, I talked to Julie Helt about staggering the staff so that, you're opening and closing at different times. So perhaps having longer hours in the afternoons and also staggering it so you always have somebody working longer on Fridays. But she said that that would not work. But like I said, I'm not going to support this because I know people who will say, what the heck?
All right. Any further discussion or comments?
I'll make a motion for approval of Village Hall office hours to be Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 4:15 p.m. and Friday from 7 a.m. to 12 p.m. year round, beginning the week of May 27th, 2024.
I will second.
All right. All those in, any discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No,
All right, thank you for the discussion all. And next item on the agenda then is discuss and take action on proposed amendments to development agreements, the brewery expansion project TID 9 and warehouse expansion project TID 9 related to occupied projects and facilities, pages 284 of your
And I'm
packet.
gonna be recusing myself once again, so have a good rest of the meeting, everyone else. Hope it's not too long.
All right,
You-
yeah, so.
Just as a matter of, or do you have to read the,
Mhm.
okay.
I do. So we'll do presentation first and then read, or we're just gonna go. over close-
I don't have anything for open session. I
Okay.
can say that. I don't know if anybody else does.
And I would note, a couple of representatives from Octopi here, in speaking to them a moment ago, they're here in case there's questions. I did inform them that we may simply go into closed session and there may be no further open session discussion tonight. They said fine, but we're here in case there happens to be questions at it, either now or later.
Did you have anything you'd want to address us with for?
No, we're-
Okay,
Here to see if anybody needs anything or any questions to be answered.
okay. Do you have any questions before I read the statement and we contemplate closed session?
Procedural though,
Yes.
just for clarification. So we're going to go into closed session and then, but we will, any action we take would be back in open session, correct?
Yes.
Just, I don't anticipate you're gonna take any action tonight, though, I guess would be my suggestion.
Oh, although the potential is there. It's, the agenda item is listed. You could take action. We're anticipating this meeting and another then possibly to finalize terms, but the potential is there for action.
All right, so no questions at this point. Then I will read. The village board may convene in closed session as authorized by Wisconsin statute 19.85 1E for the purpose of deliberating or negotiating the purchase of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business. Whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session, the village board may reconvene in open session and discuss and take action on the subject matter discussed in closed session. Do we have anyone with a motion to go into closed session?
So moved.
Second.
All right, discussion on the motion. Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
You have to roll
Oh,
call.
roll call vote for this one. Thank you.
Nyla Fry,
Yes.
Trisha Brown,
Yes.
Sam Cosmo is recused, Kristen Rungy,
Yes.
Aaron Moran,
Yes.
Joe Zisselberger,
Yes.
Robert McPherson.
Yes.